Deep, and it is intercepted by the All-American Malachi Starks.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
They're down at 11. Ward able to spin free of Cincy. And then goes to the end zone. And in the back of the end zone, it is Jacoby George. My, oh my, Cam Ward's having himself a day.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here's Fafita. Plenty of time. Throwing, and that's complete. The T-Mac. T-Mac. A house call. Again. It's his third. This one's from 78 yards out.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Moss buys a little time. Puts it into traffic. Did he pull that down? Kyron Hudson. Oh my goodness, what a catch.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Back on offense. Ashton Cincy. Breaks free.
Has a player tracking him down. It's TJ Smith. Can he get to him? Cincy. Touchdown. Get out of town. 75 yards. A new school record. 6 touchdowns today.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
We have an early guest today, G.J. Kinne, head coach at Texas State. He will join us in about 10 minutes. We check in with a senior analyst that covers the FCS, and also today John McClain and much more here on 365 Sports. And Bob Thompson, former executive at Fox, on all this catfight between ESPN, ABC, Disney, whatever, and DirecTV. Oh, my goodness, it's Paul Catalina and it's Craig Smoak in studio. I'm David Smoak, Garrett and Emery here today. Jack just left for a second. And here is a current scoreboard. The ACC, they don't have standings. They now do it this way. This is the current ACC scoreboard. Teams that are suing the conference are winless, and the teams that are not suing the conference are 15-2.
FSU fans especially deserve this. We, as a group have been collectively obnoxious, and everything that's coming our way, I think we put out in the universe. So you put it out, you get it back. And, that's what happens when you, bet on a former 5-star who's on his way down and not somebody on the way up. But oh well.
Craig, you and I are support system. We're therapy today for Paul at some point.
I don't think I agreed to that. I don't think he needs our help therapeutically, and I don't know where I would begin with that. But, yeah, last night, Georgia Tech with the big win over Florida State, 24-20.
Georgia Tech was last week.
Excuse me. Oh, yeah, that's right.
That was another game.
The first
that's
one.
Right.
That was Boston College last night. My bad. It's hard. It's getting confused. There's so many of them. It's hard to sort them out and confuse them. But, no, in all seriousness, Boston College with the big win last night. It's obviously what y'all are referring to, and I don't know. I think we need to remind people sometimes Paul's a Florida State fan, just in case you didn't know that and you're tuning in for the first time or just catching this video after the fact. But, yeah, I'm not the FSU fan. Let the FSU fan tell his side of the tale here because, man, 0-2 after all that talk during the offseason about how we're too good for the ACC. Not only are they 0-2, they're 0-2 in the ACC.
Might as well be 0-5.
That's what's funny, though. It's like they're not just 0-2. They're 0-2 in the conference that they're too good for, that they're suing to get out of, that they've, talked down and bad about for the last several months, as though they're just peasants dragging Florida State down into the mud with them. They're 0-2 against those teams. And two teams who don't have a guaranteed spot in the Big Ten or the SEC or a landing spot, even in the Big 12 potentially. Like, you'd have to see it get down the road that far. But I don't think Boston College has anything guaranteed, for example. Georgia Tech, I don't know. That's a different conversation. But regardless, these aren't like the powerhouses, but they are two pretty good teams. I'll say that. I think Georgia Tech's a good team. I think Boston College, Bill O'Brien, really love what I saw from them. And Castellanos is a lot of fun to watch. Trayshawn Ward, that had to feel great for him last night to have some big moments against his old team. And man, that was something else. I was not expecting that. I thought it would be an interesting game, but I figured Florida State would win. And man, that was just not the case whatsoever last night.
No, it wasn't. And here are a couple of more notes. That Florida State-Florida game, which will be seen later on in the year, the game may be, according to all indications, it might move to C-SPAN on a Tuesday morning, so everybody is at work. And then this
Apple
one
TV streaming
from Shahan, this one here, this is supposed to be one of your boys, Paul. Power rankings: Miami, UCF, South Florida, USF, Florida Atlantic, and IU.
FIU.
Presented FIU. I meant IU. I know that. FAU at Florida Atlantic, FIU. Presented by Pitbull. And then Hell, Florida State, below Hell, Florida.
Yeah, it's bad. That was really, really embarrassing last night to roll out at home. Look, they already are going to have a less full stadium because they're doing construction. Then the damn clock doesn't work for the first quarter. So you've got the 7 Banana Brothers running things up there. So that looks bad. Then at your home debut, you get the ball run straight down your throat in the opening drive. Nothing's changed from last week. And then you come out, and after getting the ball straight run down your throat, you say, you know who can fix this? Our inaccurate quarterback, and you throw 2 passes on that drive. I don't know what Mike Norvell was thinking last night. He's very clearly running the Jordan Travis offense still, and I don't know if he hasn't noticed, but Jordan Travis is not there.
Well, the College Football Playoff Committee knew he wasn't there either.
I mean,
remember?
So Jordan Travis isn't there. Keon Coleman's not there. Johnny Wilson isn't there. Trey Benson's not there. Jaheim Bell not there. Like, they lost 10 players to the NFL draft last year. This was not a team that was generationally or a decade run like Alabama or Georgia now. Plus, this is a team who just got back to prominence, and they lost a lot. And what do you replace those guys with? Not clearly up to snuff. And I don't think he has, at least going into last night, a realistic view of what his team is and who's on it. And they need to take the bye week this week to really assess that. And if they roll out DJU again, it should tell you a lot about Brock Glenn, because he was not only bad last night, like he wasn't just like trying to force things into coverage. He wasn't doing that. He was missing wide open guys all night long.
Yeah, he overthrew a few, and then of course there was a deadly pick at the end that sealed the game. Craig, it's shocking. They're 0-2. Remember that stat about teams inside the top 10 with the preseason poll, that there's like 12 of the last 14 years they end up outside of the poll, and Florida State right now trending to be that team.
I don't even remember who I said. I think I might have said Florida State. I don't recall
you did.
that list. I did, didn't I? I think so.
Oh, they're not going to wind up back in the poll. They're out. They're done. This season's over.
Well, okay, stop.
Well, I mean, for your grand aspirations, it's absolutely over.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, you can still win the ACC, but the thing about it, again, is you're 0-2 in the ACC already.
Yeah,
like, they're not just 0-2. They're 0-2 in the conference.
So they need help.
Yeah.
They're not getting to the title game, and which means they're not getting to the playoff. So as far as I'm concerned, my enjoyment level is over.
Yeah, no, and here's the thing. The 2 conference games, and they still have tougher teams in the conference to play. They can get back in it, but that's not even something that should be discussed.
Yeah, they need to, like, maybe, I don't know, win a first game before we start getting into, like, their
guess who's next, Craig? Memphis.
Yeah, I mean, Memphis could very well beat them as well. That was just a huge whiff on DJU. And there were some concerns going in. But, yeah, I do remember that conversation about, like, which teams could fall out that aren't in or that are in right now. And, I mean, the other ones are, like, Georgia and Texas and Alabama. And, like, they're not going to fall out of top 25. So, like, Florida State was just a logical choice. That's another example, though, of this whole thing that we do. And we're all guilty of it to some degree. But, oh, they were good last year, they're good this year, everybody's back, or this many guys are back. Or even if guys are missing, you just assume, oh, it's Florida State. They'll hit the portal. They'll be back. Look at that portal class. They're back. And it's like, no, like only so many teams can like not return that many guys and still keep their talent level high. And it's a very select group. And, in this case for Florida State, they clearly do not have nearly the same level of talent. Not only is DJU a very big downgrade from Jordan Travis. But they don't have dudes anywhere else either, for that matter. Like, this defense isn't impressive. I mean, in spurts it can be, but like they're not anything compared to last year's. Their playmakers are nowhere close to last year's.
I will agree with you on that, but they're not as bad as we may think. Because how the hell do we know? Because they can't.
That's
get
fair.
the ball.
But like when you get the ball, like, make a play. And I think that getting the ball is a hard thing to even get going with this offense right now in DJU. But I don't know. There's no like Keon Coleman or somebody that's screaming at you off the screen.
No, there's absolutely not that. But like, there's no way that the guys that they have are so much of a drop off that they can't be a factor at all. But like, when you throw the ball over their head or not even close to them, 20 times last night, then how do you even know if they're good or not?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I just feel like we do this with Baylor and other teams that struggle. Is like, at some point your playmakers have to go make plays regardless of what the quarterback's doing or who's doing what. Like, guys who make plays need to go make those and find a way to do that somehow or another. And I don't think anybody's even like grabbing the lead to try and do that for Florida State right now. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know ultimately, but they are nowhere close to, I think, what most people expected. Even if you were somebody that was already down on them and didn't think they were going to be able to follow up last year, this is still way worse than you could have thought.
They've lost. We're going to hear from GJ Kinne momentarily. When we come back from GJ, we're going to discuss the top 25, which was released this week. In fact, from today, since there was a game on a Monday. But we're now joined by Texas State football coach GJ Kinne. He joins 365 Sports UTSA coming up this weekend. GJ with Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, and David Smoak. Thanks for your time. Appreciate your time. What are your expectations now for your program going forward?
First of all, thanks for having me on, Smoak. Good seeing you. Good hearing from you. We go back
yes,
to the Gilmer days. Jeff Traylor is the head coach. Now he's the opposing coach. A little different, huh? But yeah, I think just for us, I think there's a little bit more, expectations to win. And I think our players feel that. And, they had a good day of practice today to really get that thing going for Saturday.
What is it like to be coaching a game against your old high school coach? But it's not like you guys are both high school coaches. You guys are both college coaches. And it's an entirely different world now.
Yeah, it definitely is a little unique. And I think we'd both say we're very blessed. And obviously I think very highly of Coach and he's a great mentor, great husband, great father. I haven't talked to Coach this week, but obviously I've talked to Jordan, his son, and Jordan texted me. He said, "Hey, who do I root for? Do I root for you or my dad?" And I just told him, "Hey, you got to root for Dad, and just hope we do well." So it's very unique because not only is my high school coach, obviously my senior year, but someone that I'm still really close to. It's not like I just played for him a year and I was gone. My brother played for him, and we still talk weekly.
GJ, 34-27, you guys open up the season with a win against Lamar. I know they kind of chipped away there towards the end, but just how'd you feel? I mean, a lot of teams would love to be 1-0, right? So how'd you feel about just the first adventure out there?
Yeah, I thought it was a little unique, and I probably could have done a little bit better job, but you know how these first games are when you're playing an FCS opponent, you're getting your guys up, but at the same time, you want to kind of see what your roster has. You don't have, like in high school, you don't have scrimmages, and NFL, you don't have preseason games. So, I wanted to get as many guys reps as possible and kind of really see them in a, live action under the lights. And I thought we handled that pretty well. I think we jumped on them early, and then they just kind of, like you said, chipped away at the end, and we kind of lost focus at some times. But good thing is we found a way to win. There was, you don't want to be sitting there looking up and you did all that as a head coach and you lost the game and the sky's falling. So obviously there's a lot of room for improvement and our guys know that, our coaches know that, and you can feel the sense of urgency. But at the same time, you got to celebrate the wins.
Would you like to see because of that, you kind of know what you have coming back, and then most of the time, you don't. Would you like to see college football go to something that's like an OTA format in the summer and even possibly some sort of scrimmage in August?
Yeah, someone asked me about the scrimmage. maybe if I was at one of these, P4 schools, maybe, you'd want to do a scrimmage, but probably not in this situation where we're at right now, just because of the lack of depth and injuries and all that kind of stuff. But, I think it would be nice to have some of that, just to kind of really get out there and kind of see what you got before game one.
GJ Kinne, head coach at Texas State, UTSA this weekend with us on 365 Sports.
Because of the way that you have to build rosters now with that perfect meld of high school recruiting and transfer portal, and then when you guys have somebody that's good, that somebody else is going to call and try to get them, or they're going to entertain those things in the transfer portal. How do you feel like, especially one game out going forward, that you guys were able to construct a roster and ride that wave through the offseason?
Yeah, man, that's probably the toughest thing that you got going for you right now at a place like a Texas State or a UTSA, when you have recruited really well and you put a good product on the field and people come for your guys and it's tough because not only you keep those guys, okay, that's one hurdle, and then that's in their head, moving forward. It's hard. Just anytime you have options, it's tough. Mentally to be able to lock in and get ready for the season. But I think our guys have done a pretty good job of that. And that's something that we've constantly, kind of been in our mind to focus on. But, I think for us, it's just controlling what we can control. And right now that's UTSA.
GJ, your running back, Ishmael Mahdi, man, what a year he had last year. Not only, running the football, but a guy who special teams. I mean, he was one of the best all-purpose yards players in the entire country. What was your message to him just in coming back and what you want to see from him? And what's it like to coach a young man like that?
Man, Ish is awesome. He's built of the right things and has a great family. And he wanted to be back at Texas State, and we were able to help him out with some things, and he wanted to get engaged, and he needed some transportation and needed some wheels and those kind of deals. But he's just a team guy, voted captain, extremely hard worker, not selfish at all, and wants to go out there and help the team win. And so he was a pleasure, going through that whole process with. And then this summer, I thought he really added some, bulk to his frame, and he's gotten bigger, stronger, faster. And it was good to, get him, like you said, you don't have those scrimmages, you don't have those preseason games, and you just have practice, and you kind of want to see what your other guys have. But it was good to see him get I think it was 28 carries in that first game to kind of get him going a little bit. Because obviously he's going to be someone that we lean on this year heavily.
Your father was your first head coach. Obviously, you had the run at Canton, and then one of the great wins was against Jeff and Gilmer. What makes Jeff Traylor such a good coach?
I think he's the relationships, he has that fine line. I think he's always been like that, but I think even more so in college, just because the players are a little bit more mature than high school. That fine line of relationship, and those players love him, but also the discipline and the culture that you need to establish to win those big games. So I think he just that perfect blend of relationship and old school, and obviously he knows a lot about football and X's and O's and all that. But I think the special ones have that ability to really relate and be able to push their guys without also knowing they love them and care about them.
How I mean, UTSA is a fairly new program. Obviously, Texas State's been around longer. How much do the fans on either side are maybe lighten this up, because it's San Marcos versus San Antonio? I mean, you're separated by 28 minutes of traffic, basically.
Yeah. The fans and all that definitely don't like each other, and that's something that just to be honest with you, like you said, I didn't know much about the rivalry. I didn't know, to be honest with you, when I called Jeff to help me get the job, I knew nothing of that dynamic, kind of what I was actually asking Jeff to do and all that. So I kind of understand it a little bit more. And so that is definitely unique, and it's definitely a rivalry, and fans don't like each other. And you could feel that last year in the game. But obviously for us, we need to get one in the win column to kind of be able to kind of hold our own when it comes to the social media warfare.
GJ, is it a different feel or approach being more of the hunted than the hunter, like maybe you were last year because you had success, that more teams are aware of that and maybe you're just viewed a little bit differently? Is that different from your standpoint at all?
Maybe not for me and the coaches, maybe the players a little bit, something that we're navigating through, but I don't think much, because I think the way we opened the season last year, kind of put us on the radar and put us on the map a little bit. So I kind of felt that way a little bit, even going into conference, and you could feel that when you were playing different teams. So I don't think so too much.
GJ, he helped you get the job there. So does that mean you're nice to him this weekend?
I'll be nice to him before the game and after the game, but not during the game.
What is the managing of your schedule? And I know you got other things to do and appreciate your time. What's the managing of your schedule like? And is that something you're still learning, even though you've now been the head coach for a little bit and also been in college athletics for quite a bit of time too?
Yeah, I think there's a same thing, a fine line there and a good balance. You have to use your Thursday nights to see your family and your wife and have date night and do those sort of deals. And same thing with your coaches. There's a time to grind and be up here all night. And there's also a time, hey man, you need to go home and get some rest so you can be your best version, for these players that are coming here tomorrow. So I think I've been around some really good ones and that have done it the right way. I've been some that maybe didn't. And so you learn from that. And, I thought Doug Peterson and Chip Kelly and some of those guys were some of the best I've ever been around. And obviously that was at the highest level. So I think I have a pretty good idea on what's good and what's bad, but obviously sometimes it calls for staying up here till, all night.
And then the final thing is you obviously had a hell of a career, not in high school, of course, not only in high school, but what you did in college and then also as an NFL player. When did you know you were going to coach once you played your last game?
Pretty early on. Obviously, I always, I wanted to play in the league for as long as I could and do that whole deal. But pretty early on, I knew I wanted to coach, and I would come back in the NFL offseason and coach a 7-on-7 team or a, middle school, spring league. And so I was able to really kind of find a passion in that and know I wanted to do that. And then about every time I would get cut, whether it was Howie Roseman and Chip or Steve Spagnuolo and the Giants, just, hey, when you decide you want to be done, we'd love to hire you. When you want to get into coaching, we'd love to, bring you on staff. So I kind of got a picture like, hey, maybe I do have a future in this.
Well, you're doing well. Good luck. Thank you very much for your time every time. The memories from back in the days of Canton and Gilmer and all the way through. We appreciate it. Thanks for your time, GJ.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That's GJ Kinne, Texas State football coach. They have UTSA. We'll hear from Jeff Traylor at some point this week as well. As it's great to get the head coaches around college football on the show whenever we can. And the fact that those two are that close and they do play coming up this weekend. You want to go back to some notes? Break here, come back with some notes. We've got a guest on the FCS.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that. Garrett Ross runs the mothership. Emory, of course, is already doing what he does, which is everything too. And then don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you don't mind. We do appreciate that. This is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, Robinson, Texas. Dr. Steve Childress is my dentist. Thank goodness he is. And thank goodness I finally he had kind of, I guess when I'd seen him, bumped into him, texted him, whatever, he always stayed in touch, even when I was somewhere else. And then when the COVID year hit, I was looking for just another opportunity because the dentist I had been using wasn't available. And so he was. And thank goodness I contacted him because he has put me in a really, really good spot when it comes to my dental work, my maintenance and hygiene and all of that stuff. It's not just the fundamentals of brushing your teeth. There's a lot more to that. And I had some ground to make up. And the reason I didn't go to a dentist a lot was because I didn't want to hear what they were going to have to say about having to probably inject my jaw or underneath the top roof of my mouth, pull a tooth, or it's going to be a root canal, something, a cavity. Now, most of that is gone. And a lot of it now has been repaired as we move forward. Stonewood Dental when you do go to Steve Childress and the other dentist, and there are multiple dentists, you will be treated like you're the only one there. And there are a lot of people. It's a very busy, busy place. From the time you set up your appointment to the time you walk through the door to the time you go back in the chair for a teeth cleaning or something even more surgical. Dr. Steve Childress and his staff of professionals. Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas.
Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland at Allen Samuels in Waco. Choose between 2 or 3 rows and save $12,000 or take advantage of 0% financing. Looking for something smaller? Drive home a 2024 Jeep Compass Latitude 4x4 and save $9,760 or take 0% financing and get $3,000. Don't miss out during the Make This the Summer of Jeep event at Allen Samuels in Waco, where we deliver your next adventure. See dealer for details.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Penny Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help us finally hear semaglutide. Affordable, highly effective. Google search Penny Clinic Waco and reach out to the Penny Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pennycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
All right, here we go. The top 25 is out now that you had 5 consecutive days of college football, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and also the one last night. Georgia getting 57 of the 52 first-place votes. Ohio State with the other 5. And there you see Texas up to 3, Alabama 4, and Notre Dame 5. Also in the top 10, Ole Miss, Oregon, Penn State, Missouri, Michigan, who I think is about to fall out of the top 10 when they host Texas this weekend. Utah, Baylor plays at Salt Lake City. The Utes and Kyle Whittingham are 11. Oklahoma 15, and then you have back-to-back 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5 from 16 to 20 with Oklahoma State, K-State, Kansas, and then also Arizona. So there we are. Georgia Tech is in. Clemson all the way to 25. Florida State's the first team that started the year in the top 10 to fall out after the second week completely out of the poll since Clemson in 2008.
Yeah, you know.
I want to go back to game 1 and break it down by quarter. The
Georgia
way that
Tech,
Florida State has played these last 2 games. I think we start first quarter of the Georgia Tech game
with the only good drive they've had all year.
Yeah, we start with the best, and then go from there. The other 7 quarters that they've had. We can play all day. Like, I know Oklahoma's not going undefeated, so I'll eat that at some point. I feel really good it's not going to be this weekend, just like I felt really good it wasn't going to be last weekend, but they'll get theirs at some point. And Nebraska, they've got a big game this weekend. I'm picking Nebraska, but they'll fall at some point as well. Garrett's already in the loss column.
Yeah.
So we're all going to feel it at some point. It's just that Florida State's was such a, big, loud offseason and then a very nice start. And now, 2 weeks in, they're out of the polls. But interesting to see, Texas is up to 3 now. I mean, just a one smidgen up, but still, that's a nice position to be in right there near the top of the rankings this early on. And they certainly look like they have a team that can hang around there for a little while. But obviously a lot of teams they're going to be, playing or contending with that are surrounding them in the poll, as far as the SEC teams, like there's Bama right there. There's Ole Miss right there. There's obviously Georgia ahead of them. Missouri's in the top 10. But looking at this, Oregon got dinged because they just were very unimpressive against Idaho. Michigan slipped a spot. I think they're going to slip some more this weekend because I'm picking Texas in that game. But Utah, if Michigan does lose to Texas and Utah handles Baylor, then they should be in the top 10 next week, which would be great for the Utes. Miami getting a lot of love and USC getting a lot of love as far as teams who started off much lower but are taking big jumps after this first week. I think those are the two that had the biggest leaps by far were the Canes and the Trojans, and rightfully so.
I think that it's sometimes the top 25s are what the images or the history, tradition, logos, and a lot of times, yes, because of how good they have been, but it's the earn at the top 25. And we see a couple of teams that dropped, Florida State, Clemson, Oregon, LSU. So some of them have dropped. It's hard to get them out unless you just have an awful start. And I'm not saying that, Paul, to ding you by any means. They don't deserve to be in the top 25. There's probably a couple of other teams that don't either. The college football playoff, and then Craig, continue on. Here is what it would look like based on today's top 25. Boise State would be in as the G5, and they would play Texas. Oregon and Ole Miss, then there's Missouri, Alabama, and then Penn State and Notre Dame with the 4 top seeds based on now, if they won their conference, with Georgia, Ohio State, Utah to 3, and Miami at number 4.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing one Big 12 school and one ACC school. So the season early on has played out exactly how the P2, the Super 2, wanted to. So, just all the rest is, and the one G5 school, and then the rest are SEC, Big 10. And
5 SEC. Yeah, it'd be 5 SEC, including 4 of them, of course, would be at large.
I can't see it, unfortunately. I can't read it from where I'm sitting. But that's not a surprise early on that it's heavy. It's one game in though. There's a lot of things to be sorted through, but the tone has been set, and it was set during the offseason that there's going to be like 5 SEC teams in this thing and like 4 Big Tens, and then that's just the new reality. I don't think we need to just eat ish and take it. We need to see how this plays out because that could be overreacting. But every media pundit that is in their pockets and every narrative that's possibly out there that gets boosted the loudest is not like, hey, how many G5 teams do you think can get in, or how many big? It's all about how many Big Ten and SEC. That's been the narrative since this whole expanded playoff started, and so I'm sure that it's going to be well over half. I don't know how much. And certainly week one's not going to tell the full tale. But if that's the way that it all ended, I don't think anybody would be surprised because we're already being conditioned to just accept that at the end of the year, that's the case because we're just being told they're the best. So yeah, it's probably going to look something like that when all is said and done. And it'll be, deserved, not trying to take away, but it's already been massaged up. Like it got massaged up before we even kicked off the first game. So yeah, we are being told that we're supposed to be expecting like 8 or 9 from those 2 leagues alone.
By the way, MC Gusto, always good to hear from you and the positivity. Man, we're going to be spending time on the college football projections after every weekend. It's week 2. Yeah, we are. We took 45 seconds of your time. Sorry that you did not want to see that, but we're going to because it's the first year it's gone to 12. And so it's a little bit of a different story this year. Great news for Dante Corleone. Man, hell of a player. Cincinnati has been cleared. He, of course, had those clot issues, heart issues, and he will be on the field. And that is a big-time add into the starting lineup for the junior defensive tackle, the 2022 All-American. I did not know how long he might be out, but he's back, and that's great news. And they play Pittsburgh coming up this weekend, 11 o'clock. And so he will practice most of the week. They still have to kind of make sure, but it looks like he'll play Saturday.
That's great news. I'm a big fan of his. He's a fantastic player. He's the best player they have on their team, and he changes the game. He's one of those guys that you're going to have to account for. Super happy he's healthy and ready to go.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I didn't know what to expect either as far as him returning this year. So to be back by game number 2, I think certainly was a much better prognosis than you expected when you heard the news earlier this summer. That's a lot quicker than I realized he would be even, close to being able to return. So that's amazing news for Dante Corleone, just individually, much less for all his support system. And then of course for Cincinnati, I mean, he's one of their better players, and defensive linemen don't grow on trees. They're very hard to come by, especially good ones. And so that's a huge deal for them in more than one way. And, good for them to start off with a win, but to have him back is certainly going to be another boost here to start the season.
To have blood clots anywhere is dangerous as it could possibly be. Remember the Tommy Frazier story in his leg? But to have them in your lungs or anywhere around your chest, anywhere, because you never know when it could all of a sudden create a massive issue. And thank goodness he's been treated and also now has been cleared. Tedero McMillan, he was not only the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, he was named the AP National Player of the Year, 304 yards, of course, receiving.
Player of the Week.
What did I say? Year? Well, I'm predicting that right now.
Yeah.
If he does 300 yards a game in receiving, he will be Player of the Year. Player of the Week, not only in the Big 12, but also nationally. Congratulations to Arizona and their fantastic wide receiver.
Yeah, he's special. We've discussed that at length and said that quite a bit in the offseason of just how good he was and what an addition that was going to be to the Big 12 in terms of talent boost. And so he showed that right out of the gates, and I expect him to do that a lot more. I don't know about 300-yard games and if any more of those are up his sleeve, but it wouldn't shock me, honestly, at this point because he's that good. They've got other good players in that offense that are going to become more well-known as the season goes along, and their quarterback's pretty well-known as well. But, yeah, that's just a great story. The recruitment of him, they told a little bit of it on Saturday, but just he and Fafita and a couple of the other Arizona Wildcats on that team that are big-time players that were all in high school together. And, I don't remember, it was like 3 of them were already committed to Arizona, and he was uncommitted, and they were trying to figure out like what he was going to do. And he grew up a Duck fan and thought he was probably going to go to Oregon. And all of a sudden one night he just let loose that he was going to be going to Arizona. And it was a big, massive deal to have imagine going to college with all your high school buddies that you play football with and are already pretty good with, and then transfer that over to playing in college together. Like that's a pretty cool deal. And that was obviously the pull for him, was to play with his boys, and Arizona's getting the benefit of that these last couple of years. That's for dang sure. And they stand to gain a lot more this rest of the season.
All right. A quick note, Craig, you sent this and I saw this earlier, but the Mountain West and the Pac-2, the Pac-2, Oregon State and Washington State had kind of an agreement for this year. However, it was a 1-year deal. The deadline for renewing the same situation or same schedule this year has come and gone. And it was a 1-year deal. The Mountain West and its member institutions are moving forward with their conference and non-conference schedules. Our focus remains on the current season and our exceptional teams. So any opportunity that they were going to keep doing that does not mean that Oregon State, John Wilner said this, there's no meaning that it says Oregon State and Washington State feel like they'll be a part of a conference. It's just these two are going their separate ways.
Yeah, that's what John Wilner said. And then his mentions were all like guarantees that they're in the Big 12 next year. So that's certainly an option. I guess the ACC would be another option as well. And I don't know beyond that. They're not going to a power league outside of those two. That's for 100% sure. But yeah, they're fans. And I don't know if it's just insider info or if it's just, just believe in it. But there's a sentiment like, yeah, okay, John, Big 12, and like just posting the logo. So that's their feeling, and not at all setting themselves up for disappointment. No way, not at all. But Yeah, that's something that's of interest, and maybe that is a sign that that's where it's headed ultimately. It's a process, obviously, with their lawsuit and what they obtained through the lawsuit and the timing of what they could do contractually and moving conferences and all that. So this little buffer period, we're underway with part 1, and I don't know what they've got rigged up for part 2, but certainly the eyes are on trying to get into a power conference, and maybe this is an indication that they're closer to that than they're not, but I don't know that to be sure, and maybe they don't even know that. Maybe they're just we're not going to be a Mountain West member, and we're not going to do this again. We're going to try something different this second year. I don't know.
I agree. I don't think there's anything to this as far as what's happening. We need a break for our next guest, but I also don't understand why the deadline was now. I mean, there are games that can still be scheduled. I guess you got to look ahead that non-conference games can be a little tricky, especially if you're a part of a conference where you want to go on the road once or twice in non-conference and make some money.
The Mountain West, and you want to be able to start scheduling games for next year. And you got to know if these two are in your league or not. So, I mean, you don't have to do it right now, but I don't know. I also don't make schedules. So maybe you do need to kind of start chipping away at that if you're the Mountain West schools and knowing like, hey, these are two potential fills that we are not going to have. So respond accordingly.
If, in fact, we ever get Mac Rhodes back on the show anytime soon, that's one of the questions that's away from all the other stuff about how quickly do you have to start having your because you like to load those up if you can in advance, but we've seen games changed and also added even late into the schedule. All right, so we do try to cover all of college football, obviously discuss some of the games from last weekend. Sam Herder is he's an FCS senior analyst. His thoughts about the opening weekend and also going into week 2, the teams that might be there to disrupt some things and where everybody stands in the FCS. We'll do that with him. We'll have our part 3, today, the weekly preview and summary of 4 schools, the ones who came in last year, Cincinnati, Houston, BYU, and also UCF. Bob Thompson will discuss that Disney, ESPN, ABC, and DirecTV mess, that and more. This is 365 Sports. Baylor alumni fan engagement. Doug Furch, Paul Thorpe, and so many good people that can help you no matter where you are. If you're a Baylor alum, and a lot of you who watch our show from all over the country, we have the stats that show it. And that's one of the reasons that Doug and company wanted us to start to let you know wherever you might be. For example, in Salt Lake City this weekend when they host number 11 Utah, or when they play at number 11 Utah, if there's going to be a watch party, if you're a Baylor alum in that area, they'll help you out. They'll also make sure you know where they'll be, whether it's at the team hotel or somewhere else leading up to the game, and a tailgate location outside of the stadium. If you're from Orlando or you're from Cincinnati or where you might be from and you want to do a watch party for a game that's not in even backyard, but you just want to do a watch party at a sports bar, a restaurant, a club, somewhere else, get in touch with Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement. As for Doug Furch and Paul Thorpe, they'll help you out at Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement.
It's time to score big savings at the Kickoff to Savings event on GMC trucks at Richard Carr GMC. Take the winning drive with the Texas Truck MVP. GMC Sierra is the best truck on the road. Save $9,000 on 2024 GMC Sierra SLT models in stock with approved trade-in. Plus, qualified buyers get 1.9% financing and no payments for 90 days. See dealer for details. Save big and score your deal at the Kickoff to Savings event at Richard Carr GMC.
Richard Carr, they have the truck for you.
Edward Jones Financial Advisors Josh Satterfield and John Maddox understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? When you invest with Edward Jones Financial Advisors Josh Satterfield, John Maddox, and Sean Carter, they will provide their time and experience to help you reach your goals. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Josh Satterfield and Sean Carter on Wycon Road off Bagby, and John Maddox on Sapphire Boulevard in Hewitt. Proud sponsors of Midway Panthers football. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Membership SIPC.
El Conquistador restaurants are a very proud sponsor of the Midway Panthers, have been owned and operated by the Gonzalez family since 1969. El Conquistador is recognized annually as a local favorite with their fast and friendly service. Dine in or order takeout and enjoy your favorite Tex-Mex items as well as several traditional menu items. Catering is also available with 3 locations to serve you: Waco, Belmead, and Hillsboro. The Gonzalez family thanks you in Waco and the surrounding area for your continued support of 55 years in business. Go Panthers!
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations. Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Containing only 95 calories and 2.6 carbs.
Sam Herder is at Hero Sports. He's a senior analyst for the FCS. He joins us on 365 Sports. Sam, thanks for your time with Paul Craig and also David Smoak. Your thoughts about, at least through the first full weekend of the season, the FCS. We saw some of their better teams, obviously defending national champions, South Dakota State, North Dakota State, others. Just overall, your overview and summary of the weekend.
Yeah, it was one of those weekends where, as a FCS top 25 voter, really hard to gauge a lot of the top 25 teams because there were so many FCS versus FBS games, and it's really hard to get a good gauge on that because in past years we've seen some FCS teams beat FBS teams, and then that FCS team not even go on to make the playoffs. We've also seen very, very ugly FCS versus FBS results, and that FCS team still go on to make a really deep playoff run and a push for a national title. So a tough gauge, but overall, there were 0 FCS over FBS wins in week 1. There was maybe like 25 to 30 games where it was a really close game at halftime, and then the depth of the FBS just kind of took over in the second half. And then there was like 6 or 7 one-score games where the FCS had a really good opportunity to beat FBS opponents, but came 1 or 2 plays short. So on most years, there's anywhere between 6 to 12 FCS over FBS wins. We only have 1 so far this year that went back to week 0 when Montana State beat New Mexico. So from an FCS perspective, you'd like to see a little bit more of these wins come through, but didn't happen so far through week 1.
So when you look at a game like North Dakota State and Colorado, what does that tell you about North Dakota State? Who's always good, but are they maybe ready to take that mantle back as the number 1 team in the FCS?
I think South Dakota State is still the top team, and that's why it's so hard to gauge because NDSU looked better against Colorado than South Dakota State looked against Oklahoma State. But Oklahoma State is probably a much better team than Colorado. So that's why it's so hard to balance those two things. But I think overall, with the NDSU Colorado game, we saw a little bit of swagger back in NDSU, which might sound weird because they are such a well-known and still the best program in the FCS. But when it comes to the best team in the FCS, South Dakota State has kind of taken that mantle the last couple of years and kind of knocked NDSU back a couple of pegs. So I think just with how the Bison looked, they came ready to play. They threw the first couple of punches there. And so I think a lot of FCS fans watched that NDSU game against Colorado and said, okay, the offense looks really good. The defense, especially the secondary, has work to do, but there's no Travis Hunter and Shadir Sanders in the FCS. So the secondary for NDSU will be pretty fine. Overall, I think a lot of people were impressed with the performance that NDSU put together.
Sam, just in terms of expectations being based here in Texas, I see Incarnate Word at number 12. They're 1-0. Tarleton State lost to Baylor. They also were out there, their starting quarterback. But just your kind of expectations for those two teams and just kind of the state of Texas in the FCS.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm sure a lot of your listeners are, they don't follow the FCS a whole lot, maybe just casual FCS listeners and reviewers and really pay attention to the FBS and the Power Four. And so oftentimes on FBS centric shows, they find it interesting that the power in the FCS is so Midwest that the Dakotas and the Montana schools are kind of the dominant teams. Meanwhile, teams in the South have not struggled, but they're definitely, there's a gap between them in the Montana and Dakota schools. And part of that has to do with FCS to FBS realignments. There's been a lot of teams in the South, Southeast from the FCS that have moved up to the FBS, but there are still some programs with potential. You talked about UIW. They made a semifinal run a couple of years ago, but then they kind of, their coach left and took a lot of transfers with them. I think they'll be a good, solid team, and they do play South Dakota State. They travel up to Brookings this weekend, so that'll be a good test for UIW. And then Tarleton State is the interesting one. I believe you guys have had their head coach on the show before, and they're not shy about their aspirations beyond the FCS, right? They want to go FBS someday. I don't know when that'll be. It could be next year. It could be in 5 years. But they support football really well. They fund football very well. This is their first year playoff eligible in the FCS. And I think they have a really good chance to be in the FCS playoffs. We'll see with their quarterback situation. Their starting quarterback got hurt. I think it was a thumb injury in week 0, and their offense looks completely different with him sidelined. I would expect him to be back at some point. And if he's healthy, I think this Tarleton team could be a FCS playoff team this year.
Speaking of injury, Jack Lane of Vanderbilt, Idaho, the Vandals, broke a collarbone, out for several weeks. Yeah, I think I saw a note where Jack Wagner takes over. Your thoughts about the Vandals losing their quarterback?
Yeah, it's a tough one. And it was interesting in the offseason because Giovanni McCoy, last year's starting quarterback for Idaho, he transferred and he won the starting job at Oregon State. It was interesting because Idaho fans, a lot of them didn't really flinch when McCoy entered the transfer portal. That's because they knew they had this Jack Lane kid who's now a redshirt sophomore. They knew he was waiting in the wings and had potential to be just as good as McCoy. And again, it's a tough gauge because he looked okay throwing the ball against Oregon. But overall, Idaho battled Oregon really tough. I think it was like a 49.5 point underdog for Idaho, and it was 17-14 at one point in the fourth quarter. And so Idaho fans were kind of riding a high there, and then they get the news that their starting quarterback is going to be out several weeks. So that's a tough blow. They'll have to rely on their run game a little bit. Their defense looked phenomenal, so they'll lean on their defensive side of the football as well. But Wagner, he's a redshirt freshman. He's a 3-star recruit out of Oregon, so he's a highly touted recruit. Can he step in as a second-year freshman and do what Jack Lane can do? We'll have to see, but hopefully Jack Lane can get.
Sam Herder covers the FCS very, very well. You can go to his, if you want to, Twitter feed is at Sam Herder, FCS, and of course Hero Sports is where he's at. You do have South Dakota State coming off the loss to Oklahoma State, and there's Incarnate Word, who Craig brought up earlier, number 12. That game is at South Dakota State. Your thoughts on that game? And then Montana, 4th-ranked team against 23rd-ranked North Dakota.
Yeah, it's going to tell us a lot about UIW because, like I said, 2 years ago they made they advanced all the way to the semifinals. Last year they had a pretty good winning record, but they didn't make the playoffs just because their playoff resume, which in the FCS world, a lot of people are evaluating your playoff resume, strength of schedule and ranked wins and conference strength. And UIW last year just played in a Southland conference, and I thought the Southland was really down last year. So they're looking to change minds this year and prove that they are a playoff level team, and they have a prime opportunity to show that they are a playoff level team by going to South Dakota State and battling tough. I don't think a lot of people I don't know anyone predicting UIW to win that game, but if it's a 28-21 type of game, then you go, okay, that's a respectable performance by UIW. If it's 48-7, okay, South Dakota State is still light years ahead of some of those teams in the South. And so that one is really intriguing. And then, Montana going to UND. The Fighting Hawks, they have a really good home field advantage. They can pack that stadium. It gets really loud in there. It's an indoor venue named the Alara Center. In Montana, the national runner-up last year, they bring a lot of guys back from last year's squad. They bring in like 15 FBS transfers as well. So Montana is a very, 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 very talented team, obviously, because they're number 4 in the country, but they kind of have a tendency to get off to a slow start and, make things gel. And they have a 2-quarterback system right now. They're not really sure who they want to go with as their starting quarterback. This is not the game where you can have a slow start and kind of just feel things out, because if you do that, you're going to go to UND and lose that game. And so Montana barely beat an unranked Missouri State team at home last weekend. Kind of a choppy performance. If they perform like that against a ranked UND team on the road, the Grizz could be in trouble for having an early season loss here.
Sam, I'm curious about the SWAC, and mostly because Florida A&M suffered, I think, the worst coaching loss you could have, where Willie Simmons, who'd done a really great job there, is now the running back coach at Duke. So he left that gig, and I know that they've had, all of them have different, schools have different athletic department issues. Florida A&M particularly had some recently, but how do you see him leaving affecting that squad that should be pretty good?
Yeah, Florida A&M to me is still the favorite in the SWAC. There's just so much roster turnover with them, because when their head coach did leave, the hiring process was very, very messy with Florida A&M. It took a long time. It upset a lot of fans just with the direction they were going, and not naming a new head coach until they did name James Cozy the new head coach. But during that time, a lot of players did leave as well. There's still a good nucleus of guys coming back, coupled with, I think it's close to 30 FBS transfers coming in to Florida A&M. So that's obviously a very high number. How all that gels, we'll see. But the talent is there for Florida A&M to make it back to the Celebration Bowl. Always still intrigued with Jackson State as well. They obviously made headlines a few years ago with Deion Sanders as head coach, and the level of recruits and the level of national attention that he brought to Jackson State. Obviously, when he left, he brought a lot of his top players with him. Some of that momentum went away, but at the same time, I still think Jackson State is still carrying on that momentum in a little bit, just with recruiting and transfers, because maybe a lot more people are familiar with the Jackson State brand, just with what Coach Sanders did there a few years ago. So I still think Jackson State has the talent to also make it very interesting in the SWAC race.
Last thing, Sam, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. We'll try to get you back on as the season progresses. Just as an update, because there's some good teams. Do they deal with FCS? You mentioned something about their playoff resume when I think it was Incarnate Word. Do they have politics involved in how the playoffs are set up in the FCS like you might see elsewhere?
Yeah, I think there is. A lot of it has to do with your brand. Like Montana State, they have such well-known brand names, where if Montana has the same playoff resume as an Abilene Christian, people just assume Montana is going to be the better team. I mean, I'm just picking out Montana here because there's such a well-known brand name. People just assume that Montana is the better name or the better team, even though they have the same resume as a team like Abilene Christian, just as an example, because of that brand. And I think there's also some stuff with, who's the higher seed, who hosts, because the NCAA does take a lot of ticket revenue. And so the NCAA is going to make more money if Montana is hosting more games rather than if UIW is hosting more games, because there's going to be 20,000 more people buying tickets. And so there's politics. I can't say for sure that, that's why they're making some of their seeding selections and all that. But if you follow the FCS close enough, you can kind of read between the lines on why some teams get in, why some teams don't, why this team is a 2 seed and this team's a 7 seed, even though their resumes are pretty the same. There are some politics involved with it, just like, with the CFP, there's probably gonna be some politics and behind the scenes involved with that as well.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. FCS senior analyst, also Heroes. That's part of what he does. Heroes Sports. Sam Herder with us on 365 Sports. By the way, thank you to Retired Stockbroker. A super chat support system. Somebody brought that up. 365 Sports is my support system. Laugh out loud. Thank you very much for that, and we appreciate your support.
Well, you brought up the support system earlier when talking about Paul.
Yeah, no, yeah. I did. And
I appreciate every little bit helps, you know. I mean,
hey, I know what it's like to be in the doldrums when it comes to a team I like.
I seriously want to know, like, when you rushed out of here yesterday.
Oh my God,
to
it
go
was
watch
very
this
rude.
game, and
I wish I had.
Like, how long into it before, like,
10 seconds?
Yeah. Oh, stop!
I know. You can tell. You can tell with your team when they got absolutely BF'd in that first 10 seconds. I was like, well, that's it. Like, that's it. I knew it. First 10 seconds of the first play, there's like right up the middle. I'm like, well, this isn't going to change. They didn't do anything from Ireland to here. What's going to be different? Castellanos almost beat him last year. So that was always going to be a problem. So no, it was about you know, within the first drive, I knew it was going to be. I mean, look how quickly I texted you guys last night.
Yeah, I mean, that was also like you were calling it over when it was still like early on. But yeah, I mean, you saw the writing on the wall.
I knew it.
How about Bill O'Brien?
Yeah,
Bill O'Brien.
You know, that guy he's a good coach. There's a bad rap sometimes when he's been in the NFL, but he's a damn good football coach.
Good football coach.
He's the perfect guy to hire for them.
Yeah,
like that's perfect for Boston College. And
is Mike Norvell perfect for Florida State?
Hell, I'm telling you that's all sudden in doubt. I guarantee you it is, because what he did so successfully last year is one thing, but you got to follow that up, man. You can't just like, yeah, we made the playoffs, so now it's a down year, and not just a down year, but we're gonna lose. We're gonna start 0-2, and we might not make a bowl game based on the way things are going right now. Like, I don't know, man. That's he's not gonna like get fired, but that like now comes back into question. Like his seat goes from absolutely ice cold to all of a sudden it's like it's room temperature again.
Yeah,
like that kind of a deal.
They've got to get better at high school recruiting, for sure, because that's not something they've done at elite level.
Let him flip.
You'll see the top 5 today is the things that Florida State and Clemson are both doing wrong. And it's like, if you look at what both of them are doing wrong, they're doing the same thing, just the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the wrong way to do the same thing. They're both doing it. And which is really weird considering they've dominated that conference. You know, the two of them for the last 40 years, really, or since Florida State came in the 33 years. So for 33 years, it's really been the two of them and like other little blips. And now they're both struggling and they're doing the same things wrong.
Well, by the way, Florida State, somebody said they used the analogy of 2010 Texas coming off the national championship game, the loss to Alabama, but they won.
Tweeted that
they won their first 3, and then they went into a funk where they lost 6 out of 7.
Yeah, I can
of course,
see
the
that.
one win was against Nebraska.
You had the disappointment of Colt got hurt, and what would have happened if he didn't get hurt.
And then you thought you were fine with Gilbert.
Yeah, you thought you were, just like you had Jordan Travis get hurt and crushed your national championship dreams. Like, yeah, Colt getting hurt crushed theirs, just in a different situation. But yeah, you thought DJU, or at least some people hoped DJU would be the answer. But what we've seen so far is a lot of the reasons why DJU's, like, when people go like, he's great, and people go like, nuh-uh. And what do you mean? It's like, there you go. Like, you didn't watch him last year or at Clemson previously. Like, he's got good moments, and he'd throw like a good pass out of nowhere. Like everything's bad. Like, oh, big conversion, and then bad. So he'd have like these little flickers, but that doesn't add up to anything. No. And he's got to be feeling it, man. I mean, the chance last night, calling for the backup towards the end, and man, it's just
calling for the backup in the middle.
It was the middle.
In the middle of the game.
I muted it. I muted it.
Yeah,
I muted you too, by the way.
Yeah.
But regardless, like I feel bad for him. He had made the nice gesture at ACC Media Days of like, no, I'm not going to go. I'm going to let everybody else go, which is weird because that's such a teammate thing to do. But the thing that strikes me is it looks like they haven't played together ever.
Yeah.
Like him and his teammates, they got no chemistry whatsoever. And I understand, like, you've only played 2 games together, but you would have thought that like over spring and the summer, you would have developed something. And it feels like like some pickup game where all the receivers have played together and the whole offense, but they need a quarterback. So they just go grab a dude and there's like no connection whatsoever. Would you agree with there's just no chemistry?
No, there's no chemistry. There's no
you
connection.
Can tell that,
and Mike Norvell was very good with all the transfers he got. And even the guys who came, like Jermaine Johnson came from Oregon or from Georgia. Trey Benson came from Oregon. They were blocked on their roster. Like he had Bucky Irving with him. Trey Benson did. Jermaine Johnson had like a cast of defensive ends that he wasn't going to, really shine among. But when they came, he raised their level and he raised he developed Jared Verse and Braden Fisk got better last year. When he came from the other parts, he's always been really good at finding transfers that are on their way up. But when it comes to DJU and he's the quarterback, so it's that much more important, DJU is not on his way up. He's trying to hold on.
Well, wait a minute. Now, let's. I understand he looked terrible. There was a lot of overthrows. He's thrown 42 touchdowns in the last 2 years and 14 picks. Clemson was 11-3 with him in 2022. Jonathan Smith did a great job with him, 21-7. Same thing with touchdowns to interceptions. Did anyone else? Because I saw like Softy and some of the guys that were a part of the big Pac-12, the teams have now changed. Every one of them said Florida State and Mike Norvell had to know that he was not really that accurate throwing the football.
Yeah, that's what's that's where the Norvell comes in with this is like they're not running the offense that suits him. Look, you should just copy what Oregon State did last year and hope for the best.
Yeah, Jonathan Smith was a miracle worker.
Yeah,
too,
so
right?
that's the other.
He's a very good coach, quarterbacks and offense. Yeah,
but that's the other problem is now he's in his head because now he's really in the spotlight again, but he was not. But you kind of said that like he's clearly not on his way up, DJU. Like he's either plateaued or he's on his way down, and that's the difference between him and everybody else because he has not lived up to being the top quarterback in the country.
Well, he was a number 2 ranked quarterback, a 5-star behind some other stud. But
those things are not are not always accurate clearly, and the moment you say that in this industry, like there's 1,000 people because they all work for the same sites that push back on you like you're an a-hole, but it's like, no, you're not accurate all the time.
It's made worse in his particular case because the guys who bracket him are both in the NFL right now and were the first 2 picks in the draft.
Deshaun Watson?
No.
Who am I? Trevor Lawrence?
No.
Who am I?
Bryce Young and CJ Stroud.
You're going like years ago. Those guys have been in the league
you're talking about the high school
guys who
I was talking about
in that particular year where he's the second-race quarterback. The guys who were around him, like CJ Stroud was 3rd, Bryce Young was 1st.
Yeah.
Okay, you're talking about the high school. No, you're right.
I like this tweet from Roger. I think it's Roger Sherman on X. So you won't let Florida State into the playoff if they win every game? Well, what if they lose every game? What then? You still won't let them in? Okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But no, that was a fun little break in the frustrations with some of the tweets that were rolling through that were pretty funny, and that was one of them. There were many others, especially talking about DJU. But yeah, he's a guy who's got some skills, but man, what a nightmare it must be in Tallahassee right now, and especially for him because you just know you're walking around and like everybody's eyeing you as though you're problem numero uno. And that's the territory that comes with being a big-time quarterback. But if you're a Florida State fan that's second-guessing what other options they may have had, that's very fair.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very fair.
No question. Okay, we're going to come back and look at one of the pods, the 4 teams in the Big 12 and who they are, what they did, what a couple of notes about them, and also who they have coming up this weekend in the Big 12 and elsewhere. One of the other things we have around the corner, again, Craig's off the radar in about a half an hour. Paul's top 5 at the end of the show. And if you are anyone who's been interrupted between the DirecTV and Disney and et cetera, Bob Thompson's going to try to explain that a little bit with us. Haven't had him on in a long time. He'll join us today after Off the Radar around 5:10.
Will he be allowed to talk any college stuff, or is he too involved in everything?
There's a couple of things that he was involved but I would think so. I would think that he could probably still give us a little bit of something.
I don't know. We were just talking about Oregon State, Washington State. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much he would even have to say about those, but there was a tweet because we had to move on to the guests when we were talking about that. But I think the best way I saw it summed up was this was not Oregon State or Washington State announcing that they were like
on the verge of joining anybody. This is them saying we're not joining the Mountain West in a merger is the basic takeaway from that. That's the main takeaway. Yeah. So just kind of tidy that up and put a bow on it. And so what that means on the other side, who the heck knows? There's a million different, there's a handful of different options that are pretty obvious that you could think about. How realistic they are, who knows? But yeah, joining the Mountain West is like full-on members is clearly off the table from their standpoint.
All right, when we come back, we'll look at those 4 schools, UCF, also, of course, Houston, BYU, and Cincinnati. Yes.
Decided to put them in pod. It's the American pod. That's, I know BYU's not from the American.
We're gonna name them, huh?
Well, you've got I thought about it this way. You've got the American pod. That's pretty self-explanatory, even though BYU wasn't in the American. You've got the Four Corners pod.
Right.
You got Big 12 North and Big 12 South.
Yeah.
West Virginia's like but TCU wasn't in the Big 12 South, but you get it.
Are they exactly. Is West Virginia north of Stillwater?
Yes.
On the map?
I'm nearly positive. Yeah.
All right. By the way, we, again, appreciate your time. We never, ever take it for granted. We appreciate you being a part of us every day. Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Every weekday afternoon from 3 to 6, Paul's Triple Option, Monday through Thursday, 1 to 2. And this is 365 Sports. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans, their Texas cigar wall that Joshua put together. When you walk in the door, off to the left immediately, there's a bunch of fresh coffee beans in these big glass jars. And then you'll see some accessories at the counter. There's the cash register, the counter. And then there's more like after that, a lot of different, options if you like to smoke pipes. And remember, they can repair them if they have an issue. And then there's the 48-foot walk-in humidor off to the right. There's a couple of doors. It's so big, you have 2 doors to get into it. And to the very back right of the humidor is the Texas cigar wall. For example, McAuliffe, they have 3 different type of cigars against that wall. The Leyenda Toro, the A. Churchill, and Torquatus Churchill as well. Also, the Warfighter Field 5.56 millimeter Toro, combat veteran owned and operated cigar company. There's the Rojas Carnitas Toro as well, along with many others if you want. And then on top of that, yes, Padron and Cohiba and Ashton and Macanudo and Artur Fuente and Romeo and Julieta, Rocky Patel, and what you want. And, by the way, that one cigar that I mentioned is a Romo craft cigar. You hear about craft beers, you're starting to see that a little bit, that word pop in to what they're doing now with cigars. Joshua and Cheyenne, Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers, everybody, the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go, this 4 o'clock hour. And we're having the pods, 1 through 4 in the Big 12. We use the same 4, but we switch up the dates so it doesn't kind of get stale. The timing's not the same, where it's like, da-da-da-da-da. So the pod Craig called the American pod, although BYU not a part of that, but UCF, Houston and Cincinnati. Oh, I know.
People come at you.
I know. All right, the Big 12, we start with UCF, Gus Malzahn. They have Sam Houston State, 5:30 on Saturday. That game is on ESPN+. And they open up by running all over whoever they, of course, wanted to on Saturday. KJ Jefferson, a little shaky. We discussed that yesterday. But, Craig, we start with you with the Knights. Paul, then back to you on them, too.
Well, I mean, they got a very convincing win and didn't have to sweat much of anything. I think the big takeaway on the negative side is obviously that first quarter, in particular, the first quarter for KJ Jefferson, where it was not good. Throwing the football was ugly, and I think he got better as the game went along. Obviously, they're going to be very good running the football. Like they're going to be very good running the football, but you have to have that other threat. Early on, they did not have that threat. They had yakety sax playing in the background, basically. And then, KJ Jefferson got better, and I think he's going to get better. I think this is a new team. It's a new year. It's a new season, and he got better, like I said, as the game progressed. So I think as more games get under his belt, he's going to be more of the guy that we saw with bright spots at Arkansas. But he's not, without his moments where there's going to be things that go wrong. So that's just the give and the take. But I don't think that's emblematic of what to expect moving forward necessarily at all. And I don't think Gus Malzahn feels that way either. But just in case, got Ja'Curry Brown there, but he's just not played a lot of football. But it was good to see him get some reps because he hasn't played a ton of football. So that's just something to monitor. Obviously, coming out of the weekend is KJ Jefferson's continued development. Run game's great. They are so deep there. RJ Harvey's I guess you would call him the headliner, but he was kind of the guy in the first half. And then like Penny Boone was the guy, but Miles Montgomery, who we saw at Cincinnati previously, he had a really nice game as well. So they are super loaded there, but are they going to be able to get Kobe Hudson and those receivers more involved because of said quarterback questions? I think that's the big key for them, but they took care of their business, and I think you moved on.
By the way, before you go back, Paul, with your next, but speaking of Hudson, Micah Hudson did not play in the opening game for Tech.
You know what? That's going to be a really interesting annoyance for Joey McGuire, is that he's so high profile that when he doesn't play, his very first, hey, where's Micah Hudson at? Like that was one of the press conference questions, and he explained it, but I do think that's kind of the annoyance of having a guy that caliber is like, where is he? Why is he not playing right away? It's like he's a true freshman.
His profile keeps going up. Of the 4 athletes that Patrick Mahomes picked, to roll it out, he was the football one.
When you promote that you got one of these,
I know.
Then you're going to have to take the Paul UCF this week, Sam Houston State.
I think they should be fine. Although Sam Houston played well, I think that. Like Craig, I think KJ Jefferson will get better. He's got a really good quarterback coach coaching him, and Gus Malzahn. Their running game is really deep. Let's see how much better their defense is. It's hard to tell. But my opinion hasn't changed much. Although, KJ, I wish for UCF fans to not have to suffer for what I'm going through right now. But so I hope that he's as good as I thought he was going to be there, because I thought it would work out.
And all of a sudden your quarterback evaluations are like,
they're on the DJU.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never thought DJU was going to wreck the world. I just, and I thought KJ would fit in that system well. I thought it was better for him, and it probably still is. But he didn't start off well last week when you thought maybe he would have. But, give it time. I think, at least he completed some passes, and they won the game.
Who would you rather have, KJ or DJ?
KJ.
Okay.
Let's say KJ.
Yeah, I guess.
I'd rather have herpes at this point than DJU.
You'd rather have herpes?
No, dude, that doesn't go away unless they've created something scientifically the last few years that I'm unaware of. But
look,
at least TJ will graduate at some point and move on. Like herpes stays around forever.
Good point. But it's just, he's been that bad. He can't throw the ball past 7 yards. How are you supposed to win that way?
You could have herpes, but Florida State wins, would you?
Many people in Tallahassee do.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true.
Kim Coulter saying Micah Hudson played. He had no catches.
Yeah.
And so I should have been a little bit more specific there. But you expect him like right off the top to be able to be a part of it. All right. So they're not till the next pod, like 2 days from now. Houston. Oh my God. I thought UNLV would win the game, but they dominated the game. Houston struggled. Willie Fritz, we like him. Obviously, a hell of a coach. It's going to take some time. And now, by the way, you go to Norman to play Oklahoma. And this isn't like the Greg Ward, Tom Herman type Houston playing Oklahoma. This is going to get ugly.
Yeah, and just to be clear, so when we do these, do you want to do like the look back and forward at the same time?
I'll be the dictate. I'll dictate.
I just want to know.
I'm starting off with they're playing Oklahoma. Then we'll go back to what happened to them on Saturday against UNLV.
Okay, so
what do you mean?
I'm just trying to figure which order you want me to go in.
No,
like look back or
they're playing Oklahoma and Norman.
Okay. Well, based off what we just saw, it's not like that's why I was asking. Like, based on what we just saw going back, it's going to be really ugly on Saturday in Norman, Oklahoma. Willie Fritz and company have a lot of work to do, and there's not a bunch of life rafts on the horizon or anywhere close. They're not even inflatable. Like there's nothing arriving that's going to save them from what they already have and cure their ails right now, other than just hard work and getting better and hopefully getting better as quickly as possible. But they had a lot of issues on the O-line. And then Donovan Smith was affected by that to some extent, and then he wasn't, and he made more mistakes that compounded the issues that were starting up front. And so it was all bad. They had some things here and there, like on special teams, and like Muse, who came over from Georgia, like gave them a little flash, Mekhi Muse. So they've got like a player here and there, but they're going to be in a bad spot this year. I just think that's pretty clear. We kind of already figured that going in, but I think now that you've seen a dose, like, it's going to get better. It has to, but it's not going to be this weekend against Oklahoma. Not after what we saw in game number 1.
They had 26 yards rushing on 27 carries. Some of those were sacks of Donovan Smith, but man, that's certainly not going to, that's, you have to be able, and they can't. Parker Jenkins had 2 carries for 17 yards. And he's their guy. Rashawn Stanford, who we covered in high school, had 4 carries for 13 yards. Chris had 16 yards. They could not run the ball. And it wasn't like, again, they were sacked so much it just like knocked it down 50, 60 yards. But Houston, Paul, at Oklahoma, who won their opening game as you expected, dominated Temple.
I think they're going to dominate Houston. I don't think Houston's deep enough. I think that you've got year 3 of Brent Venables. I think that he's finally starting to build some depth. Now, granted, he's not into the SEC schedule yet, so he probably doesn't have the SEC quality depth, but Oklahoma's biggest issue in its last couple of years in the Big 12 was, they couldn't come at you in waves anymore. Their talent had been, plucked away mostly by Lincoln Riley. And now I think they're starting to build that back up again. We'll see how it continues in the SEC, but I think that Jackson Arnold is really fun. I think he's going to be really fun to watch. I think that Deion Burks is going to be really fun to watch all year long. I think they've got a lot of weapons there on offense that are going to be tough, and they're starting to play defense like Brent Venables wants them to. So I think most positive things for Oklahoma this year, the only thing that's going to get them is that they're in the SEC and it's a bear of a schedule.
Yeah, no, but so you win every game you can, and then you try to go and pluck off a game or two that won't be easy. It's Oklahoma. They're going to be fine.
They're going to be fine. The O-line's got to gel and get better, but they're replacing like the entire line. So that was already to be expected. I just think in that first game, that just rattled people, even with the expectation of just like maybe being jarred by it's not far enough of like what you were expecting, even knowing it was going to take some time. So we'll see how behind schedule they really are. They'll get tested quickly, but not this week.
Yeah, and again, it's Houston at Oklahoma, 6:45 Saturday, the SEC Network. Cincinnati coming off the win. They get Corleone back on the defensive line. And Pittsburgh, 11 o'clock on ESPN2.
Yeah, I mean, that was a nice win over Towson. They left a lot of points on the board, though. I think that's something that you definitely walk away from that game. It shouldn't have been 38-20 against a team like Towson. You should have had a bit more out there, couldn't finish drives, and that was part of the issue. But the main thing you walk away from is that Brendan Sorsby's your starting quarterback, and you're pretty thrilled with what he can do. He didn't play a perfect game. You wouldn't expect him to with as little experience as he has. He's only started or played in a handful of games at this point. Came over from Indiana, Texas guy, and had a really nice debut. I think he was he not like newcomer of the week in the Big 12, I think? Sorsby,
yep.
So, just build off of what he showed you. And I think you got some talent there on offense, but just left some points out there, and we'll see Sorsby kind of as he continues to progress. But I thought that was a nice start for Cincinnati. Now, as far as, do you want me to talk about this week as well? With that?
Yeah.
Okay. I think this is a really big game. Like if you look at the overall schedule for the Big 12 this weekend, there is a lot of ACC matchups. I think there's a couple, or at least one Big 10 matchup. There's a bunch of power matchups in the Big 12. Like half the league's playing power matchups, it feels like, from what I was looking over earlier. So this game with Pittsburgh, the whole ACC trash talk, baby.
Yeah.
Lord knows there's nothing going on between those two conferences to warrant any trash talk. But, I think Pittsburgh with what they showed last week against Kent State, they brought over Holstein from Alabama, former highly rated recruit. He had a pretty nice debut, threw for a bunch of yards, and, had a really nice day. So he's going to be, I think, somebody you obviously have to factor in that duel between Sorsby and Holstein will probably – Was he at Alabama or was it Texas A&M now that I'm thinking about
GCU. Eli Holstein?
Holstein?
I thought he was
It was at Pitt, and then he was
maybe
Alabama.
it's a transfer error. Maybe he was at all of those places.
He was at Bama. He was just at Bama.
Okay, he's at Bama. I just forget. Maybe he was at all these places though.
No, he was just at Bama.
Okay.
You guys are confusing the hell.
He committed to A&M and then decommitted.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking of. Then I'm thinking of the commitment. But yeah, he had a really nice game, and I don't know much else about what to expect out of Pitt. So this ought to be informative when it comes to the Cincinnati side of things and how they stack up with a much better team than they saw last week.
Yeah, you can't really judge on Towson other than they did a good job. The Brendan Sorsby looked good, won the newcomer of the week. As far as Pitt goes, this is the first real test for both of them, and curious to see Eli Holstein and what he does against a Cincinnati team. He'll be better than the team he played last week. Dante Corleone is back.
I just crack up. That name always makes me just think about the mafia.
Well, it should, because I think that's what they were going for.
There's a really weird coincidence or something.
Yeah, I mean, they're really fans of the most famous mafia movie.
Yeah.
I think I think Cincinnati and Pittsburgh will be very interesting, like Craig, because we don't really know anything about them yet, and they're both coming off of rough years. So this is your first chance to make sure it's really not a rough year now that you're playing another FBS opponent.
And as it stands, it looks like it's 2-point spread in favor of Cincy. They're at home, so you wonder if that factors in at all. But this is expected to be a tight game. And, yeah, I just don't feel like I know either team well enough to have a great feel for how this game will go. You know what I mean? So this will be one where I just kick back and see what the result looks like and then figure out how it unfolded that way. But ESPN has Pitt, despite being the 2-point dogs for betting purposes, they have them actually, according to their analytics, as like a 56-44 type of a favorite here, Pitt on the road. So, yeah, this ought to be a pretty close game. And if not, then obviously that'll be a story in its own right.
All right. So just glancing at you mentioned some of the teams they're going to play. I don't have all of them. There's the ACC game with Pitt and SMU, the Big Ten game, Nebraska, Illinois, SEC, Arkansas and Oklahoma.
No. Arkansas is at Oklahoma State.
You're not listening. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
The games against other schools and other conferences, those are the teams that are playing.
Gotcha.
A couple of teams from the SEC, Arkansas and Oklahoma. Oklahoma State plays at Arkansas, as you said, Houston against Oklahoma. So there are in Washington State and Tech. And so there's some games where they have a chance to get, put a couple of notches in your belt. There's also a chance to have a bad weekend. Cincinnati, Pitt, we just discussed them. Houston and Oklahoma, we've discussed them. And UCF, Sam Houston State. BYU, just an hour and a half north. SMU, it's an ACC opponent. Friday night, 6 o'clock on ESPN2.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I'll mention with Gus Malzahn at UCF is he's a coach, so he's not going to not respect Sam Houston and the talent that they're going to have and what they're going to come rolling in with. I think they're going to be well prepared, UCF, for Sam. But, yeah, BYU, they looked really good in their opener. Glad Jay Hill is okay. Their DC, apparently he was in the box at the game, even though it was like the day after he had a heart attack. And apparently he and Kalani Sitake talked and agreed to keep it as normal as possible and not let anybody in on it until they absolutely had to, that he had suffered a heart attack. So they handled it that way. And I guess he was up in the box on Saturday, but he'll be back to, I guess, more normal this week. And he's good. And so that's just great news for starters. But Jake Retzloff had a really nice start after beating out Gary Bohannon. I think it's pretty clear that Kalani Sitake has a great deal of respect for Gary, as we're not surprised by that whatsoever after having our own dealings with him.
Yep.
And I'd anticipate we're going to see some Gary this weekend because SMU is going to have multiple quarterbacks playing different roles and giving different looks. And I think based on the tea leaves that you're probably going to see Gary in some type of situation this week to kind of throw a change up as well for BYU. So that'll be interesting to see that. But yeah, I think you walk away really happy about what you saw from your decision there at QB1 and what Retzloff did for you. The rest of it feels like a bit of a work in progress, but I thought overall it was a pretty good game for BYU. It was a really nice start, and just glad Jay Hill's okay. And I think this is a big opportunity, although they're not nearly the same away from home as they are at home with that raucous crowd behind them. And I think SMU is just more talented on paper. So I think this is a game where BYU is going to have to pull the upset. But I think that's possible. I mean, it's possible, but it'll be a hell of a challenge going to Dallas and playing the Ponies.
Yeah, I think SMU is going to be loaded for bear. They're going to try to. They've got something to prove, to a lot of people about being a new team that feels like they're ready to go into the Power Four. So I think SMU is going to win, but Jake Retzloff played well enough last week, so looked like it worked out, and we'll see how it moves on down for them. But nobody around BYU had high expectations anyway. Like they expect this to be a transitional period. We haven't heard anybody going, well, if this happens and this happens. Like they kind of know where they're at right now.
I know a guy that's a pain management doctor that I've gotten to know. In fact, he once injected my lower back with cortisone or a steroid. He's a huge BYU fan. He goes, we have expectations of winning about 4 or 5 games this year. And he understands where they are. He's not unrealistic. I said, are you going to the game with SMU? He goes, I don't want to be around anyone at SMU.
Hey, that's understandable if you've been around people from SMU before. Yeah.
And again, it's like
nobody else. There's some good ones, but there's just But
that surprised me. They're that close, and he's not going to go watch them play.
The frequency of SMU's D-bag to cool person ratio is a lot higher than most schools because it's such a small school. So you have more frequency as far as running into obnoxious SMU fan on the street. It's like a 1 for 2, as opposed to maybe other bigger fan bases like 1 in 5.
Who would be Baylor's about to be in Utah, but
look,
who would be next?
Florida State. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure there'd be people who say Baylor, and maybe there's 1 out of 3.
Yeah, when they were winning, and there was a lot.
But
of
SMU with this ACC attachment now has just ratcheted up. And I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying they know the perception. They'll respond with something about money, I'm sure. But I don't know what that crowd's going to look like because it is SMU. So it could be like what we were watching at Stanford the other night, or it could be raucous because
I think this will be a good crowd. Not like the FSU game.
No,
because they're
now they feel like they're probably going to win that game. More so than they did before.
Paul, can you wait for that game to come, that SMU game?
I can now.
Dude, based on what we've seen, they could blow them out.
So I finally,
God.
here's the thing. I finally get to go see them in person, and they're awful. Awful. It's been more than a decade since I've laid my own eyes on my beloved team, and they're awful.
Yeah.
It's disrespectful.
Well, I'm interested to see what that crowd, because I think before the first 2 games, you would have looked at that could have been a really massive FSU crowd, overall, 80% of the stadium. But no, I think BYU traveling, they're not the same. So I'd expect, and like I said earlier, SMU is just a better team on paper.
You think BYU is going to help fill that baby up? Because they
I don't know about fill up, but I think there's plenty of Mormons in Dallas that'll be there for
from all
support.
over the place. Yeah. By the way, so they play a Big 12 game against Utah to Baylor. There's 2 against the ACC. Pittsburgh, and then also SMU, 4 against the Big Ten, and 3 games against the SEC because Arizona State's playing Mississippi State.
Yep.
Among the Oklahoma and Arkansas games too, and then there's the Pacific Coast Conference, the Pac-2, and then there's American whatever. All right, Paul. I think this is because you may have created this. Because if you remember, Craig and I interviewed Rick Hart, the AD at SMU, and he was going to invite you to come into a booth, but he asked you because you're going to have to wear an SMU hat. Which
I'll happily wear it now.
Yeah.
To hide my shame.
And you're broadcasting from there, correct?
I mean, I'm planning on it, but I.
No, you're going to. You can't back out.
I have a feeling, now I have to change my plan because I'd reached out to the Seminole Club of North Texas, which now I don't think is going to do something on Friday night. So
do they just quit on the team?
Yes, of course.
No, you don't do that.
Here's the thing.
That's not SEC ready. That's all.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But I mean, that's why,
you can't just drop having. That was planned a long time ago.
I'm still going. I'm still going to do something. I just think that now I'll have to do it at SMU.
All I know is if I'm a team that says Paul's coming in my city, Texas Tech almost evaporated on Saturday night. Yeah. And you're going there in Lubbock, and now with what FSU is going to do in Dallas.
I don't know if Orlando will want me back now that you bring that up, considering that they were well in control of the game.
There you go.
Just the most epic collapse when I was there last year. And you know what? It's funny. I'm not doing the post-game show this year. You and then Matt Wilson are doing it but that was the one show I wanted to do because it was an exciting game to talk about, and we couldn't get it on the air. And the one guy who could was down in the locker room, so we didn't get to do one. And then
Jack is our MacGyver.
Yeah, and it was I knew I texted him and I was like, well, this is not gonna get done because
I just think you were already at a bar.
No, I was there for a good long. Garrett and I were going back and forth, but we couldn't get it figured out. But yeah.
Do you drink that coffee mug to look cool?
I think
suave.
I think it's a nice affectation. But no, I'm just thirsty a lot. So that gives me a time to pause and calm down. I'm trying to get used to later in the year when Florida State's 1-4, 1-5, where
You think they're going to win a game?
Yeah, they'll win one.
I'm just kidding.
But
all right,
after I have to go watch them in person lose to SMU, then
I got another nugget about Florida State. You want to hear this?
Mm-hmm.
The poll has changed quite a bit, of course, since 1936. Florida State's the 3rd team since the rankings expanded to 25 in 1989 to go from preseason top 10 to unranked after the week 1, which is basically week 1. I mentioned 2008 Clemson. 2007 Michigan started 5th, and they were gone. So they're not alone.
Well, they also did this in 2017 too, where they were a top 10, and then Jimbo Fisher. Well, then that wasn't Jimbo Fisher. That would have been Willie's first year.
You mean there was a second year?
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord. Okay, Paul, thank you very much, and Craig, for what we do. Every Monday through Thursday, we have the 4 different teams, and then we will discuss them throughout the week and rotate again on the days that we actually do discuss them. And today was the incoming from a year ago, with UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU. So tomorrow it will be the 4 corner schools. Tomorrow with Houston, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah. All 4 of them won, by the way. They opened up the first Big 12 weekend with victories. When we come back, Paul Catalina, of course, I mentioned about an hour from now with his top 5. Craig Smoak, and Off the Radar. This is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Marcos.com online. The fastest growing pizza brand in America. Bob Mock owns 5 stores in the Waco area. And when you go online to Marcos.com, you can order your own. Maybe you know exactly what you want to order to pick up. It doesn't have to be pizza, too, because you have wings and sandwiches, salads, and more. But you can also have codes that allow you to get discounted prices for what you order online. And there's always a little something special that they have, like the Pozzoli. And of course, they've had some other specials that pop up online at Marcos.com. Fastest growing pizza brand. I mentioned that. 5 locations in Waco, and it was like, 5 to 8 years ago, there were none. But that's what Bob Mock has brought, who's been in the pizza business for a long, long time. I love the pepperoni and sausage magnifico. You cannot see any, it's loaded with pepperoni everywhere and Italian sausage on top of it. And I like the thin crust even more than anything else. So if you want great pizza, chicken wings, sandwiches, and more, if you want that, you can order it, go online. It doesn't have to be here. It's where you are, because it's the fastest growing pizza brand. So it's probably where you are at Marcos.com. Pizza lovers get it.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year. It's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
Welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports, a segment on Tuesdays and Thursdays at around 4:45 as we are Central Time, where we just take a look at grab bag of topics from various sports, not just college football. Just all kind of depends what's in the news cycle or what's of interest that's out there. And this time of year is the best because we can get into little things like TV ratings that don't necessarily exist. We're not talking baseball TV ratings until like World Series time, but
right.
On a week-to-week basis, those can be fun to look at in college football. And so that's actually where we're going to start because we haven't been able to do this in a while. Unfortunately, maybe it's just like the lag of having a game last night. Like there's no rating for last night that I've seen. And quite frankly, the couple places I normally go to that have like a listing of the best games have not updated it, which is strange. So don't know what's going on there, but I can tell you about a few of the games because the networks that aired them are promoting heavily how successful their opening weekend was. And primarily the network I'm talking about is ABC, which is, coming off of a really great weekend, had 8.2 million viewers for Texas A&M and Notre Dame and the Irish's big victory in that. Was that a mud fight? How would you categorize that one?
I was kind of off to the side watching that while we were covering Baylor Tarleton State. And it was kind of just a kind of like almost for a while, like Georgia Clemson. It just like nothing was taken off. And then a touchdown or two was going to win it, whoever scored that. But it was not like a high hair on fire type of game. There were some moments. But no, it was more of a slugfest.
It was not a barn burner. Yeah, it was more of a Big Ten game. That's how it felt, at least, as far as just like more of a low scoring back and forth kind of who's going to break this one loose and score a touchdown and like have a lead that's insurmountable kind of a thing.
That's a good way to put it. It was a Big Ten.
Yeah, it was a Big Ten style game. So 8.2 million viewers for that one. Most watched Saturday night football game in 2 years. Most streamed regular season college football game ever for ABC. And its peak, it had 9.3 million viewers, but 8.2, very salty number for Notre Dame and A&M. That was the big one from Saturday for ABC. Then they also had Georgia and Clemson.
That was an early game.
7.9 million viewers.
Holy crap, that's good for an 11 o'clock kick.
Most watched week one noon game on record. It had a peak of 9.5 million at one point. So it had the highest peak of the two games I've mentioned thus far. But yeah, for a noon game or 11 a.m. game, depending on your time zone, 7.9 million. So just a shade behind A&M and Notre Dame. And then Florida and Miami, 6.6 million for Gators and Canes. Most watched late afternoon games since 2017. And those little windows, that's ABC doing the promoting there. So that's what I'm repeating. But 8.2, 7.9, 6.6, college football is back, baby. And like I said, I haven't seen a rundown like I normally would. There's a couple sites I go to, and maybe it's the holiday weekend that's interrupting that. I'm not exactly sure, but the only other game really of interest as far as the mega matchups go that would be in this same vein was obviously Sunday night, the Vegas Kickoff Classic. 9.2 million viewers on ABC. So that didn't count in their weekend calculations, but their Saturday, calculations. But on Sunday, they closed out the weekend strong with 9.2 million. At one point, 11.1 million viewers for LSU and USC, the network's most streamed college game on record. And so it was a rousing success, 9.2 million for LSU and USC. And based on the ones I've been able to gather, that would be the highest ranked game. I don't know what would have topped that, but that's a pretty healthy weekend for ABC. I don't know where the rest of the ratings are. I'll have to return to those on Thursday. But hey, Lincoln Riley, big SEC win, and I think the biggest crowd of the weekend watching that one to close it out. So big success.
You know what's incredible? Okay, so
Great
Clemson
success.
and Georgia is a hell of a game, right? It's a hell of a game. There's a lot riding. And Michigan and Ohio State had 17 million. That's because, and again, that had a lot on the line. It's late in the year. It's one of the few games. It's a late November, whatever that is. But that's a good number for nearly 8 or 9 million for an 11 o'clock kick on a Saturday for Clemson and Georgia.
Yeah, really is.
Yeah, it's a hell of a number. And I don't know. I saw some ESPN spokesperson, kind of touting the rankings, and they had more of a breakdown. I'm not going to get into like the nitty gritty, especially in week one, especially when I've got an incomplete picture here, but they were touting like the younger audience that I guess like the 18 to 34 number was higher than it has been or whatever.
Right.
And I do wonder, the old heads, and I'll include myself in that, is this whole like, oh, all this change. I do think some of it's not like being old head. Some of it's just like, this is stupid. Like, this is dumb. Some of the stuff that college football has going on right now. It's not even like being old. It's just like transferring willy-nilly, like at any point. Like it's just, there's some stuff that's goofy. That's not necessarily good for the sport. But the expanded playoff, I don't know. You want to throw the return of the video game in there, the new conference alignments. Maybe I do wonder if maybe there is going to be like a swell of younger audience like growth when it comes to college football. That's what you've got to hope for, at least. And at least for like this opening weekend, there was a slight sign of maybe that's the case.
Well, I think so. And you know what you have coming up this weekend, Texas, Michigan, which Paxton just brought up. That's going to be a 10 million or more because you're talking about two absolute heavyweight alphas. I think that the concern about driving people away from college football is if they go to the next level. But you know what? And I say this, and I was thrilled just to sit down and watch the LSU and USC game. I wish I could have watched more on Saturday. I couldn't because I was covering the game. Remember, Garrett, you and I were over here watching games as we were doing the post game. And then last night I watched that. I feel like I'm more entrenched in college football watching the games than I have been in maybe 2 to 4 years. And I was one of the ones that thought maybe they would drive people away. But big banger games are going to be just huge.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm listing off a bunch of those. And so, yeah, I think Texas and Michigan will probably have over 10 million, at least at its peak. It should, based on those two brands. It doesn't get bigger in terms of like audience sizes than those two, I feel like. Maybe Ohio State would have something to say about that. But I think, yeah, Texas, Michigan, the only downside is just that Michigan's not really rolling in on a heater. This isn't last year's team, whereas Texas is pretty close to last year's team just in terms of hype and expectations and things like that. So, anyways, there's a few ratings for you. Meanwhile, this was something I did not know was happening last night. I just didn't have it on my calendar. But Joe Tessitore made his Monday Night Raw debut as the lead play-by-play man for the WWE and their Monday night flagship show. And this was already announced like a year ago or whenever it was, months and months ago. I just didn't get the dates in my head right. So he's just all of a sudden he was hosting the show. And I was like, oh, that's right. Like I knew that was coming up. I just didn't know it was last night. And so it was really jarring because I'm flipping back and forth between that and the Florida State game. Did you hear about the Florida State game last night? Did you watch any of that? I don't know if you saw.
They played Boston College.
Oh, did okay.
Boston
How'd
College.
Castellanos play?
Yeah, he's a hell of a baseball player Is he play for the Reds now?
It's the Phillies.
There's a deep drive. No,
and there's a long drive.
Yeah. No, but anyway, so
Craig,
it was very confusing.
You're the Dragon Deluxe today on this Florida State stuff.
No, I'm just setting OU up for failure in the embarrassing loss to Houston this weekend or something. Yeah. But it was making my brain hurt because I'm listening to Joe Tessitore not call college football and then going over and flipping to college football. And it was I don't know, it was like this weird mixture that I had not experienced before. But I will say, after getting over the initial shock of just like hearing Joe Tessitore's voice and like applying it now to pro wrestling, he did a really freaking good job. I thought he was really good. And I think he'll be even better the more and more he does it, like anything else. I was very hesitant because that's just a guy you don't picture in that space necessarily.
I think he'll be great.
But no,
yeah.
I'm telling you, he was great. Yeah. And he clearly is a fan. And he clearly like knows some stuff. He's not just some dude walking in willy-nilly with no respect for it. He treated it respectfully. He gave it his due diligence. And I don't know what style of a fan he is to begin with, but he was great at the descriptors. And I thought he was really, really good. So it took me a second to get used to that, but that was last night. And the part that was just weird though is, he's sitting there talking and it's like, here's Joe Tessitore, right? And he's usually talking to like somebody about college football or whatever. And then at one point he's trying to like transition to something else. He's like, yeah, so Uncle Howdy has been here the last couple of months. Like Uncle Howdy, like, oh yeah, now we're back in pro wrestling. There's Joe Tessitore having to talk about Uncle Howdy and the Wyatt family on Monday Night Raw. I was just like, oh yeah, back to reality. But that was a funny moment, just hearing him have to get into those types of the storylines. But again, I thought he was great. I don't know what the plan is when McAfee comes back because he's gone for football season. That's what he does now. He'll be back in like January or February. And I don't know if they'll pair those two together, but that'd be interesting, right? Tessitore and McAfee paired up together. So I don't know, but I'm just giving Joe Tessitore his flowers because I obviously love wrestling and I know a lot of people don't, but I thought he treated it really, really well.
Joe Tessitore can make a 3rd and 3 from the 27 of a 34-0 game in the fourth quarter sound like it's to win the national title. And there's a little bit, first of all, that's fantastic. He got a lot of great opportunities. I'll never forget, though, the year that they moved into Monday Night Football. And it was the first game or whatever. And I remember the great Brad Sham on Twitter saying, Joe, give it some breath. Give the game some breathing room. And
CC Gus Johnson.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's 3 or 4 like that. But that's also kind of a compliment. But him doing wrestling, no doubt, is a good match.
I was surprised by that. Paul, you have anything on that before we move on?
I thought he'd do well with it. I thought he just has the right personality for it. And he's a respectful human being anyway. And I don't think that's also like he's the kind of guy that doesn't seem to me like they would call him up and be like, listen, we like your voice and your enthusiasm. What do you think about wrestling? And he's like, and they're like, how about for this much money? He's like, sure, I like wrestling now. I don't think he's that kind of guy that would do that, because the other thing is that there's a certain amount of theater that goes on with it. But there also has to be genuine reaction from the hosts that they're surprised by these things, and they are in awe of what's going on, even though, again, a lot of this is theatrical, but he's really good at those things. I don't want to break your thing, but like there's the theater nature.
Right. No, he did a good job of weaving in and out. Yeah.
Good save.
No, he had to, you have to drive traffic and you got to weave in and out of a lot of different things and a lot of different people. And he was nailing the names. And so just kudos to Joe Tessitore for his debut as the voice of Monday Night Raw.
Come back?
She's been dead for several years. So it might not want to do the shot in the dark thing anymore.
Not be great.
And by the way, if you mention any wrestler from the 80s, odds are, no, they're not around anymore at this point. Like there's a very few and far between compared to, the 90s, I guess, or even the early 2000s.
Hulk and Ric Flair are still around.
They are. And Rick is just, he's going to be 100 years from now. Ric Flair's still going to be wooing it up somewhere, baby. Robe undone and just having a party. But there you go with that. And just a couple more notes before we move on. I was hesitant to even bring up the tragic story from the NHL this past weekend. And I don't even know if you guys wanted to get into the horrific story about that, but man, just the outpouring of support for Johnny Gaudreau and his family, and the horrific car crash that occurred. Not say car crash, but the crash that occurred. Him and his brother on bikes before their sister's wedding get hit by a drunk driver. He passes away. Turns out his wife's pregnant and pretty far along. They canceled the wedding, obviously, and I've just seen so many memorials and things of that nature, and I think that really struck a lot of a chord, just the details of that, more so than you see the headline. I think people are kind of almost numb to maybe drunk driving, and we touched upon this yesterday. I was talking about how much you hear that in the news, but I don't know. That was another one of those stories. I know his wife has now spoken out at this point, but you talk about a tragedy that just the more layers you unwrapped, it just got worse and worse and worse, and That shook me, man. That really shook me, and I'm glad to see so many people rallying around, and hopefully it looks like they will have a lot of support, the Gaudreau family moving forward. But I cannot even begin to fathom what the last few days have been like in terms of what they had to deal with. I mean, that's
I was watching a football game, I think, and I saw pictures of the two brothers. Was it last night? It was
last week.
Last week, you remember, Garrett? Did you see that too? I thought it was over the weekend because I was like, man, that touched a lot of different people, no question.
Yeah, so just sad story there. I just mentioned it. I know his wife came out and had a statement and appreciated everybody for their support. But yeah, just man, do not drink and drive, I think is the big message here. And we'll see what happens with the driver who apparently in his first court appearance was worried about the fact that he wasn't getting out and had to stay over the weekend, which just makes me a level of angry I don't know how to quite adequately explain. Like if I could reach through that television screen right now, boy, oh boy. But hopefully justice is served there, but a very, very sad situation. So just thoughts and everything else with the Gaudreau family as they get through that. And then on the other side of things, the final note for you here, Joey Chestnut.
Did he win?
Still the king. He beat Takeru Kobayashi in their big Netflix showdown. 83 hot dogs and buns in 10 minutes for Joey Chestnut. He beat his own world record and takes home the last bragging rights, if you will, against his rival in Takeru Kobayashi. But Kobayashi finished with a respectable 66
hot dogs and buns, but that's 17 short of Joey Chestnut. That was on the Netflix special Unfinished Beef. This was their first go-round, the two of them, since 2009. So this was a rematch, 15 years in the making, and I saw some of the promos and stuff for it. I did not care, honestly, and I know there was a big promotional aspect to this from over the summer when he wasn't taking part in the other contest, and I feel like all that was a setup for this anyways to promote this, but that did go down, and I'm going to mention probably Netflix more moving forward because they are starting to dabble. Not that I consider this sports, but they're starting to dabble in stuff like this. They got Monday Night Raw coming up at the beginning of the year, and just interesting to see them kind of expand their horizons. But Joey Chestnut remains the king as he defeats Takeru Kobayashi, and I just don't know how you could ever eat hot dogs again after one contest, much less do it multiple times throughout your life.
He makes a lot of money on that.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
They don't have delicious relish and brown mustard on them. They're just
ketchup.
dunked in water.
It's dunked in water, and it's so
I know, it's
cushy
like
and
disgusting,
like,
watery bread.
But here's the thing: if you're doing that, are you even eating a hot dog? Are you eating something else that you've made?
You're inhaling.
You're swallowing food, basically.
I'm a fast eater.
Yeah.
And I have been thought to be kind of
Jack too.
Jack is too.
Yeah, remember?
That's right.
Media days.
I am one that almost like I inhale it. Like anyone that's doing this with a fork, and it just drives me crazy. But I went there to eat. Let me eat. But golly, I can't even imagine downing that many hot dogs, much less one or two.
Watery
bread,
hot dogs in your stomach. 83 of those bad boys. I don't even want to know what the other side of that looks like. I'll just pretend like he just digested and everything's good and he celebrates and has a beer or something. I don't know. But
let me tell you something. He would make Paul here.
Yeah. No, I don't. I saw. Did I tell you one? Like in 2001, right after he won, I was in Las Vegas with my parents and my sister, and we saw Kobayashi at the steakhouse that we were eating at Caesar's Palace. And I was hoping like he was going to order like a gigantic steak. He was like catty corner to us, and I was like, man, I hope he orders like this big gigantic thing or has 4 steaks. It's like no, he had like a little, like a fillet.
Garden salad.
Yeah, I think
no dressing.
You can't.
You probably have to.
Yeah.
But
Otherwise,
it was like I was in Vegas. It would be like I went to see Elvis, and he's like, "I'm not doing blue suede shoes tonight. It's not going to happen. You're not going to hear it." Great for Netflix and having the two guys go at it, but I think this settles that once and for all. I mean, he destroyed him.
Yeah, we don't need another rematch when they're 15 further years down the road. But yeah, that was a one-sided affair, and this is an off-the-radar segment. So if you're wondering, like, why, that's about as off-the-radar as I can get as the hot dog eating contest on Netflix and Chestnut versus Kobayashi. So I'll end it with a proper sports note because we know this guy a little bit. Trent Williams, his holdout with San Francisco is over. He has agreed to a restructured 3-year, $82.66 million. How much are his career earnings at this point? Like $500 million?
Well, he left Washington and San Francisco. They traded him. He's got to have made $250 million
at
or
least.
so.
82.6, $48 million at signing, 25.6 signing bonus. So yeah, he is back, and the 49ers have their star left tackle as they get ready to open up against the Jets next Monday.
He was holding out, and because of what he did when he was in Washington, it's not like that the 49ers can be like, oh yeah, he's going to come in here. Like if you're going to call anybody's bluff about not playing in the season, Trent's not the guy.
No, he will sit out. And to think that he was a lazy kid back when he was like a junior high kid at Longview High School, and they had to beg him to come work out in the morning.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a great story that I'm sure he's passed down to a lot of people out in that area, but one worth just continuously telling because he's carved out a hell of a career, and looking at it, $168+ million in career earnings for Trent Williams. So yeah, he's been I feel like he took over kind of like the Larry Allen scariest man in the NFL mantle in a way, but there you go with that. And just final note. I don't know if you heard about this or not, but with their 0-2 start, Florida State has dropped out of the AP Top 25, and there are a few things off the radar.
You guys are close to each other.
I mean, it's just wrong that he would.
He just just keeps peeling it back.
I hate to do this to you, but the minute that Oklahoma.
I'm expecting it, man. I prepared myself.
But you have to have a win under your belt before you could talk about somebody else if they don't win.
I mean, who'd they beat this week? Oklahoma.
Temple, yeah.
Temple. Okay. Well,
now it doesn't matter.
Congratulations on that.
All right. Kim Coulter sent us another picture. Remember, he put the 365 Sports logo on the tent, showed it as they were unveiling that or putting it together. There's a part of his tailgate before last week's shootout with Abilene Christian, the 365 Sports. He said that one of the most popular parts of what they had, which to me, eventually at some point would be in badly, is the jalapeno poppers. They had hundreds of them or dozens of them. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's this is towards the very end as they were getting ready to go inside for that shootout with Abilene Christian, the Fighting Wildcats.
Appreciate that support. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We didn't
can't wait to see it in person.
Yeah, I didn't ask you to do that, and you did, and that's awesome. So appreciate that immensely.
I did not send this to you, Craig. I should have. There's one other note that's kind of non-sports is the U.S. President's Cup team has been selected. You qualified that 1 through 6, but the other picks, Sam Byrne, Tony Finau, Russell Henley, who had a huge weekend in the championship, Keegan Bradley, of course, who's going to be a Ryder Cup captain, Harmon, the lefty, and Max Homa, who kind of just disappeared as the season ended. What a year for Scotty Scheffler to win $62 million this season. All right, when we come back, we'll hear from Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports executive, on what's going on with DirecTV and also Disney. Are you affected as an audience? Do you have any questions? We'll do that next. Bob Thompson and 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe. You want to build something, you need to know where they are, and I'll tell you where they are. On the east side of I-35 on Loop 340 and Highway 6 in Waco. Since 1943, when they opened up their doors, they have brought you excellent, unbelievable, reliable product, but also incredible customer service. And now they have, since December of 22, this tremendous facility just off the I-35 and the east side of 35 and Highway and Loop 340, and also Highway 6. They have pipe, they have steel, they have metal. They have a huge showroom with like an extra $1,000 and 1,000 products available, some 2,500 products in all. The distribution, when you go to pick up your product, it's heavy duty. Maybe it's just something you need a pickup truck, a hauler, an 18-wheeler. They have what you need when it comes to building, of course, commercial or residential, and they could also help you deliver if that's what you need, because we're talking about heavy, heavy equipment. They are experts when it comes to metal buildings and more. PioneerBoys.com.
When it comes to me and my money, I know the way it should be. I need a partner I can count on. That's Genco and me. Genco is my credit union. They're always there for me. They're people I trust. They treat me like family. My money, my future, my credit union. Genco.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Bambi SQ, what is the number one reason or two or three reasons, Bambi, that people should contact House of Travel?
As a travel agency local here in Waco, we can take care of all your bookings, your payments, answer your questions, help you when there are issues or problems, things that may come up that you don't know what to do or how to fix them. People don't realize we don't charge a fee for what we do. It doesn't cost you extra to use a travel agent. We're just here. We get paid by the tour companies and the cruise lines to represent them. But you have an expert on your side that's here and local, and you have a name and a face to put together to help you with anything anything that you may need, give us a call. We can price things for you. We can help you answer questions. We can make it simple, easy, and one stop.
Your knowledge of all the years you've done this and then spit it back to them or give them options?
Helps us to kind of know a date range, a budget, what your goals are, and what you want to see and do on your vacation. And then that helps us to know what to look for, and we can narrow down and help you make the best choices for your vacation so you get the best value. You get exactly what you were hoping for, and making sure that it's taken care of with a carefree, easy, simple for you type vacation. I've been doing this for over 40 years. Every day I learn something new. I experience new situations and things that I can help take care of for people, whether it's just making sure you get the best deals and find the best vacations, or whether it's to solve that problem, like you've got a flight that's being canceled and don't know what to do. There's weather coming up. Should I cancel my trip next week because of the hurricane? Those are things that we take care of and you don't have to worry about. You've got somebody that you can rely on that you know is an expert, knows what we're doing, have been doing this for a long time, so that you're not questioning, okay, does the person on the other end of the phone really understand what I'm asking or know how to find those deals? You've got an expert, and we are here to take care of that.
For more information, go to houseoftravelwaco.com.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don's Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
We'll hear from Bob Thompson here momentarily. This is 365 Sports. David Smoak, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak. Hey, do we have the Aranda comment from yesterday or what it was Monday's presser on, we heard him in the post game about the comparison to being on a fighter pilot with all this great mechanics and weaponry and all that, but someone wants to kill you. So then he talks about his focus, that a lot of people, I'm one of them, it would drive me crazy if I looked at my phone and it had 4, the red 4 next to a text. Here's Dave Aranda on how focused he is in reference to text messages on his phone.
Yeah, and they all say it's just hard. I think it's I don't want to make it anything more than what it is, but it's your time constraints and how a lot of times you want the job to be done before you move to the next job. The way it is right now. If this was a phone, I'd have a bunch of unread messages, and you have to kind of feel okay about that. And I'm used to reading them all,
I know we have Bob Thompson. That would drive me crazy with the numbers next to my text messages. I've seen people like 1,436.
I get, if you have a bunch, if you've just won the championship and you're going to get texts. I know, when Baylor won, I sent one to all the coaches and the players that I knew, and they all got back to me, but I knew it was going to be later, but they were at least clearing them out. But if you have your emails on your phone and you have 40,000 emails, then just take your email off your phone. You're not using that feature.
Yeah, Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports CEO, executive, president with us on 365 Sports. Bob, are you like that with your phone on text messages?
I try and keep everything as empty as possible. It's like I used to have an in basket in my office, and if it got too full, I'd just throw the stuff away, and I figured it was that important. Somebody bring it back to me.
I love that. I need to do that more often myself. So try to explain this Disney, ESPN, DirecTV. I saw you when I saw you tweet this out about, hey, what's going on? And that I even saw that people are reaching out to the conference commissioners to try to have some help or support. What's going on between Disney, ESPN, and DirecTV?
Well, it's just, first of all, it's your typical kind of network versus distributor carriage issue. Although I've got to say this one smells a little different to me. Usually it's just a matter of price, but price is probably involved here. But it also seems like we're discussing things like how the ABC networks, Disney networks would have to be distributed by DirecTV. For entities like Disney, Fox, when you buy a channel, you're not just buying one channel, you're buying a bundle of channels that includes broadcast network, the sports networks, and, in Fox's case, Fox News Channel, Fox Business Channel, and in Disney's case, Nat Geo, FX, other non-sports related channels. The sports channels seem to get a lot of the press because it's a very top of mind type discussion. What it appears DirecTV's asking for is, they're probably fighting about price, but they're also asking for that bundle to be kind of decoupled so that they didn't necessarily have to carry all of Disney's channels from, A to Z, just the ones that they felt their subscribers wanted, or to have the ability to repackage, re-tier, offer skinny bundles as opposed to a giant bundle so that, people are only paying for what they really want to watch. And, certainly part of it is a response to the venue venture previously announced by ESPN, Fox, and Warner Brothers Discovery, which is currently tied up in court as a result of Fubo basically asking for a judge to stop everything. So, that's why I say it smells a little different because it's priced, but it also appears that there's a lot of discussion about package as well as price.
Why? I guess because it's not going to hurt them. Like nobody's going to not have ESPN. I guess you can withstand the subscriber loss if you have to, but why do they let it get down to this point where they even have to deal with bad PR?
Well, obviously they've been probably having discussions, and there's a reason that agreements are timed to expire the first week of September, because as it relates to sports channels, football, be it college or professional, is a big hammer. And the networks have historically used that date because that's what gets people, bent out of shape. I mean, all you have to do is, look at some of the comments on Twitter or whatever, on the message board. It seems to be running pretty much 50-50, people being pissed at ESPN and people being at Disney and people being pissed at DirecTV. The one thing that's a little different with these fights now is, you can change so easily between services. It used to be much more difficult to get out of contract as it relates to Comcast or DirecTV or, any distributor. But now you can, turn it off and you can turn on YouTube TV 5 minutes later, and you've got, you're able to kind of work around the problem. And I saw a lot of that happening this week, especially when, the football game, the USC LSU game kind of went out, mid play.
Yep.
And the screen of death, as I call it, came up, the black screen of death that, we're no longer allowed to carry this channel. So, and today you saw the PR wars begin. Disney sent or DirecTV sent out a rather lengthy letter from their public affairs department that talked to the conferences, commissioners and ADs and various constituents related to collegiate sports, saying what was going on here. And ESPN had Jimmy Pitaro was on CNBC this morning explaining their side of things. So we're into the PR wars now, which is certainly part of any well-played strategy, and it's just going to have to run its course. I'm not sure. Somebody asked me what the odds are for this Monday because of the Monday Night Football game, and the way it's sounding right now is not real good that it's going to be resolved by then. It seems as though DirecTV's pretty dug in, and Disney, etc., ESPN, and all their networks, they seem to be pretty dug in as well. So this could be a little different, and that's why I say it smells a little different, because lots of times these things are resolved pretty quickly. Case in point, last year ESPN had an issue with Charter, and it was a big thing. And then it got resolved right before the game on the first Sunday night game. Or I think it was, they missed one, and it might have been the second game it was resolved. So we'll just have to wait and see. But it's not pretty, and everybody seems to be pulling out all the big guns.
Bob, what do you make of the future of the venue thing once the court case is resolved? Do you think this is something that to worry about getting defeated, or do you think that they'll just have to morph it into something else?
I think it's hard to say which way the courts are going to go, but I believe what will happen ultimately is that there's going to be some level of bundling in the streaming world. And I think everybody recognizes that. I think what the big issue is, and why DirecTV is having the discussions they're having as it relates to distribution structure, is they just want to be treated on the same level. You know, if these guys can get together, Fox, ESG, or Fox, Disney, and Warner Brothers, and offer just a skinny bundle and not make you carry all the other channels, you know, you can just buy the sport. DirecTV wants to be able to sell it in the same manner, you know, and which I can certainly understand that. If venue's not allowed to go forward, I fully expect that each of those partners in venue will just come out with their own individual streaming service for direct to consumer. And, you know, they'll probably all lose a whole bunch of money. And at some point, there'll be some form of consolidation. That's always kind of been the way it works in the media world. You lose money so you can afford to lose no more. And then you do some sort of a deal to hopefully create some economies of scale and a more attractive package as opposed to just selling it on your own.
Did you get I don't know, maybe I saw somebody that it was kind of a chuckle that this was going on, but I thought it might have even included, you know, the Big Ten teams that were Pac-12 teams, and all of a sudden the Big Ten network, was it a week ago? It's not available on whatever that is. I mean, it's like, oh my, Comcast, like, oh my God, no matter where we go, we have games we can't watch.
Right. It's that was slightly different. You know, that's related to the Big Ten network, and what they're doing in that scenario is, you know, now that Oregon, Washington, and the SoCal schools are, quote, Big Ten markets, the Big Ten network is trying to flip them from what was once an outer market rate to what's now an inner market rate, because schools reside there. And Comcast has not agreed to pay that extra rate. And so those games were blacked out in this weekend in Oregon and Washington because they had not paid that higher rate. And so, yeah, you had a lot of people there doing the same thing, you know, dumping Comcast or keeping Comcast in hopes that it gets resolved, but adding YouTube TV or some other carrier that, you know, offers the Big Ten network so that they can watch those games. And that will go on. Each school has to be on the Big Ten network twice, one non-conference game, one conference game as it relates to football. So you still got another Oregon and Washington game coming up at some point, both which will be conference games. And you still have 2 UCLA games and 2 USC games that are going to be coming up as well. So Comcast isn't huge in Southern California, but they are the major cable operator in the state of Washington and the state of Oregon. So there was quite a bit of you know, angst over that this week or last weekend, and there'll be another round of that when the games, you know, another Oregon game and another Washington game are put on the schedule.
How much, when you said there was like 50% were mad at DirecTV or 50% were mad at Disney, ABC, whatever, ESPN, how much do CEOs, do those who are running these companies give a damn about what the customer thinks?
Oh, absolutely. They do, but they also, you know, have to answer to their shareholders. And I think that's the kind of the fine line that everybody has to walk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Comcast or DirecTV, excuse me, and Comcast kind of feel that they're in a fight for their life. You know, that those businesses have not performed well lately. They're losing subscribers left and right to the streaming business, and they have a belief that the programmers are trying to, you know, win on both sides, win on the linear side and win on the streaming side. And that makes it tough to declare, you know, a winner in any specific case. But certainly they care about the consumers, no doubt. It doesn't appear that way to people, but look, that's, subscribers, whether they're streaming subscribers or linear subscribers, it's the lifeblood of the television business. And without viewers, we don't really have a business. And but that goes for Disney as well as it goes for DirecTV.
How do Oregon State and Washington State navigate an independent schedule and getting those games televised next year?
I would say, pretty similar to what they do this year. When they did the deal with the CW and a couple of games on Fox and had the scheduling alliance with Mountain West, they'd probably try and do something similar. I wouldn't read a whole lot into the fact that they didn't resolve an agreement with the Mountain West Conference for next year. They could be just kind of hanging around to see what might happen, but that doesn't mean they can't, put that, deal back together again in pretty short order. So, it's just, they didn't get to a deal now. It doesn't mean they can't get to one in the future. It's tougher being an independent these days because there's just not as many independents to schedule against, obviously. And with each conference going to more conference games as opposed to non-con games, it's a little more difficult. And you also have to remember is that Oregon State and Washington State only control the TV rights for their home games. If they're on the road, it's falling under somebody else's package. And that's, wouldn't be involved in whatever package they put together. I think they did a smart job this year in hooking up with CW and selling a couple of games to Fox because the most important thing for them was to be distributed and as widely as possible and remain relevant. And it's almost amusing that those two schools are being more widely distributed and having, broad linear network coverage from coast to coast. And Oregon and Washington can't even get the games on the cable operator in the state of Oregon and Washington. It's kind of like the shoes on the other foot. It's all the reasons that Oregon and Washington left. Have, they didn't want to be on linear or they didn't want to be on streaming only. Well, they're not even on anything now. So
right.
But that's, remember, that's just two games. Those schools, the other, 10 games that they have are, going to be very well, at least 9 of them will be will be very widely distributed.
Craig gave some numbers from the first week. Obviously, the Clemson, Georgia did like a 9 million. Notre Dame and A&M did a big number. Different times of the day. But what do you think from the early numbers that have come out? And then we had this brought up. How much could the Texas-Michigan game do this weekend?
The early numbers have been very, very promising. I think, it's hard to say that realignment had a lot to do with it because there wasn't a bunch of conference games. Right. I think there was the one that was a conference game. I can't remember if there was one. There's just some nice non-conference matchups. The numbers have been great, getting up around 9 million. That's fantastic. I saw that LSU USC did 9.2 million, which that's a good Sunday night number. Obviously, the DirecTV black didn't hurt that one too badly. So that's a good sign, and I think it will also, play good the rest of the season, especially when you get a lot of these matchups that have never occurred before because of realignment. It'll be people tune in just out of want to see what happens. I think Texas, Michigan can, exceed 10, maybe 11. I think it's going to be a big number. I haven't looked to see what they're up against in that window. So, but it's going to be a good one. No doubt about it.
Hey man, we appreciate you. We've I know it's been somewhat calm. Of course, there's that Clemson and FSU thing with the ACC. Who knows how that's going to go? And those teams haven't won a game yet, by the way. But always great talking to you about some of the media. And hopefully things have calmed down, but always want to pick your brain whenever we can.
My pleasure. It's always good to talk to you guys. I hope this dispute ends quickly so that we can get back to the games and not having to talk about kind of the ugly dark side of this business.
Yeah, I know. I have both cable and I have ESPN Plus, but I also do have YouTube TV for right now. I've kind of enjoyed, and I got to make my decisions on that with my budget, but it's kind of a nice little mix between them. So thanks for your time, Bob. Appreciate you as always.
All right. You guys take care.
Bob Thompson, man, you talk about a mother load when it came to trying to decipher the conference realignment and why and the numbers and all of that and what networks were thinking and who would want whom. And then, of course, even Patrick Crates, Jim Williams, and others, he helped us, man. He calmed things down, or at least gave us a lot of education.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to talk to a guy who's at the heart of all these deals. I still go back and you asked him, I think a couple times ago, like if the Pac had come to you and said, can we do the Big Ten deal? He's like, well, we offered them that. And you're like, oh, wow. So like everything, you find these things out and you're like, oh man. So when Bob Thompson needs to be on the documentary they do about the collapse of the Pac-12. They'd be like, well, they thought that they could do it differently and reinvent the wheel. So it's always great to have Bob.
He brought up the Texas-Michigan game and what else it's up against. And John McClain is next. They kick off at 11. There's no other top 10 teams. There are top 10 teams playing at 11. For example, Penn State's playing, Oklahoma State 16th. But there's nobody that's going to take away from that audience. Notre Dame kicks off at 2:30.
Well, because who's going to put a game up against
nobody with
Notre
any kind of a brain cell?
Yeah, they already know that there's about 10 million they're going to watch Michigan, Texas. So if that is any crossover whatsoever, you're going to probably avoid that with any of your own major matchups and try to get a bigger number elsewhere. But yeah, I think that one ought to have a lot of eyeballs. I mean, and that's the type of game that networks are going for more and more these days. It's cleared through realignment and clear with kind of the talk about the future. But certainly a good sign, I think, just for the health of college football that you had the opening weekend that you had with as many games drawn as big of numbers as they did. And, that'll be something to track is just the crowd that said, it's kind of like when, like the NFL had its protests and everything. It's like, I've never watched the NFL again. Like the ratings are higher than they've ever been before.
Oh my God.
And I kind of feel like that's what we're going to, it's a different situation, but I feel like all these changes, like this isn't what I grew up watching and this and that. And look, I've had a couple of moments where I've said that about certain things because it's not like every move has been the right move per se, but in terms of predicting it to be the failure of college football, seems to be probably far from that in the long run. And I think, the more you post matchups like Michigan and Texas and things like that, then you're going to get a big crowd brewing and they hopefully cut into some of the younger folks that are going to be the next wave of college football fans.
Yeah. It's easy to like boycott like a singular product. Like I'm not going to like when there's so many other options out there,
right.
like what happened with Bud Light, like it's kind of easy to boycott Bud Light because you can just be like, well, I'll just drink
Coors Light,
and so those are easy, but like when you're going to say like, I'm not going to watch this anymore because it's not what I grew up with. Like, all right, so you filled hours, days, months of your life with this for however long, and you're just going to go cold turkey. There's not like,
no, I'm going to watch the XFL.
Yeah. It's not on the same time of year. Are you like, you know what? I'm really quite into Australian rules football now. All of a sudden you're like, no, you're not.
I'm sure some did that, but that was just one of those things where it did not turn out to be the way that some folks were talking it up. And I think that's the same thing with college football. That's the point is like all this change. College sports are dead to me. They're not the same that I grew up with. That's true. But the way you grew up with it, they weren't right. They weren't right. And so, like the not paying players was not right. That was not the good thing to do.
No, you're right.
And it was illegal ultimately. So, for as much as there was like, oh, that's players getting paid. This is not for me anymore. I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, you wonder if there's going to be any kind of sometimes there's a spike and then it drops. But I could watch a game like LSU and USC, that style of game, those two alphas. I could do that if I needed to every night or 4 times on a Saturday and wish I could. By the way, Iowa State, a note, they're one of their best players, Caleb Bacon, the linebacker, out with a lower left injury, might come back by the end of the year. That was a report from Matt Campbell.
How many people, like, when things change, like athletes getting paid or something like that, are mad because they just didn't have that opportunity, so they they like lash out on the athlete. We're like, well,
I'm sure there's probably for like a really like
sometimes I think about that, like where it's.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was mad about people maybe getting their college debt forgiven, and I was like, well, why? Are you mad about where the money's going to come from, government wise or whatever? I mean, because that's kind of a valid argument. Let's talk about that. He's like, no, because they didn't do it for me, and I'm like. So nobody gets it? Like,
well, I got to tell you that wasn't one of my favorite times when I heard that story either. But that's jealousy on my part.
But yeah, but like again, if you have a problem with the way that they're going to do it, like how are they going to finance this? Like, where's this money going to come from? Does this mean anything for my taxes? That to me is an argument that's very valid and needs to be had all throughout on both sides of it. But if you're just mad because you didn't get this government program, then you're not really mad at that.
They could always pay me back.
Yeah, they could.
Yeah, they're doing that with other people.
Stick to sports.
When we come back, Paul has a top 5 around the corner, but Hall of Famer John McClain on the cusp of the NFL regular season. That's next. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace. They have a smokehouse box that is available for $70. It is for football season. It is for tailgating. It could be also for what you want. If you are in the middle of starting to go out with, dove hunting season, and you have a ranch or a lease and you want to take something out there when you're going to eat with you and the guys, one choice brisket, one whole chicken, and then also 5 pounds of Smoky Ridge hot links for tailgating, or for maybe you want to just do it at home because you like to put something in the smoker, or however you might do that. And that's available at Waco Custom Marketplace here for you. They have pellet fuel. They have charcoal. They have all of the mixes and seasonings and marinades you could ever imagine what you want when it comes to tailgating. Also, cold beer and wine when you walk in the door onto the right-hand side. Full-service bakery and butcher shop. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Hi, I'm Dana Hassel, President and CEO of American Bank. Waco is a great place for business, and for more than 70 years, American Bank has been the bank for business. We continue to invest in our growing community with state-of-the-art branches conveniently located to serve you within minutes. Our experienced bankers, lenders, and decision makers work directly with business owners like you every day, providing tailored solutions, timely answers, and local insights face-to-face. Schedule a meeting with one of our bankers today and find out what makes American Bank the bank for your business. Member FDIC.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
He is to humanity what bacon is to breakfast. He is allowed to use his cell phone on an airplane. He is Cesar Leal of Leal's Mexican Restaurant.
I don't always eat Mexican food, but when I do, I prefer Leal.
Leal's Mexican Restaurant, 9000 Panther Drive in Woodway, 254-772-8140.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Hall of Famer John McClain, NFL, but so much that he covers with us on 365 Sports. And John, I saw this note with the Texans named their captains on Monday. Obviously names like Tunsil and Stroud among some others, Stephon Diggs. But did I see where John Weeks, the never-ending, always, forever, ever-ready deep snapper from Baylor, also was named a captain?
He's named captain every year. Baylor should put him in their athletic Hall of Fame. This is his 15th season. He's never had one bad snap. He's been to the Pro Bowl. He's everything Baylor would want in a player for that athletic Hall of Fame. And yes, he's a captain. What I find interesting is Jalen Petrie was last year and the year before, but he's not this year, and it's voted on by the players. And I have no idea what they do behind the scenes, because Petrie's one of the most popular players, one of the hardest workers, who has moved back to his position that he played at Baylor under Dave Aranda. And he had a great offseason and preseason, and people look for him to make the kind of plays he made at Baylor when he was Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year as a senior.
I think it's an you can't have more than one guy from a school college
That could
program.
be,
Yep.
Age over beauty, obviously.
Absolutely, yep.
John, as the season kicks off this week, we see contract disputes getting settled. Brandon Ayuk got settled last week, and CeeDee Lamb, and now Trent Williams. I'm curious about this, knowing that Brandon Ayuk and CeeDee Lamb were never going to miss games, but Trent Williams has done it in the past. So were the 49ers maybe a little bit more motivated to make sure that one in particular got done, knowing that this guy is a true believer in what he says and is not going to, mince words when it comes to here's what I'm prepared to do?
When he held out before, I was shocked. And then when he played as well as he ever played after a year off, I was shocked, because most guys who sit out a season, it doesn't happen much, but usually you're never as good as you were before, and you miss a year's salary. Now, I thought Trent Williams would show up, because remember, this is the first week they start getting their big base salaries split out over 17. So mostly guys show up. Now, Jamar Chase, he has been holding in with the Bengals, and it's getting to be their first big practice is tomorrow. And I still think they'll get something done with him, although Mike Brown, their owner, is notoriously the toughest guy, usually the cheapest guy, and so his agent knows that. I'll never forget when Achilles Smith was a top 3 pick, quarterback from Auburn, and we interviewed him at Madison Square Garden during the draft, and we said, what do you think about getting drafted by the Bengals? He goes, well, I'm not real happy about it. My agent, and I was standing next to his agent, Lee Steinberg, says they're the cheapest team in the league. And Lee bowed his head and turned 5 shades of red, because he knew those negotiations were going to be even tougher with Mike Brown. So I hope the Bengals get it done, because Joe Burrow, back being healthy, they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender, and he needs his best receiver.
John, Texans and Colts up first for Houston coming up this Sunday, noon kickoff. And just what's kind of your feel now as we get into actual games here? I know there's a lot of reason to be excited, starting with C.J. Stroud, but year 2 now with this staff. Just kind of what are your thoughts on where they are?
A lot of people, Craig, are picking them to be a Super Bowl contender. I'm not. I think they need to worry about winning division, winning a playoff game at home, which they've done 7 times in their career, but then they've lost every time in the divisional round. They need to focus on winning this division and then getting a second home game, which will help them get to the AFC Championship game. Houston, the city of Houston, has not had a team reach the AFC Championship game since the Oilers. I love your Blue Oilers after the 1979 season. I've said all along, I think the Texans would be a legitimate Super Bowl contender next year. The schedule's tough. Teams they go against have great quarterbacks, and they might be up to the task. They're loaded on offense. They're healthy on offense. Defense is more suspect. Tackles. The biggest question on offense is their offensive line. Can it run block? They haven't had a 1,000-yard runner since 19. Haven't had a legitimate runner since Arian Foster retired. So they got to run the ball better. And defensively, they need to get 2 big defensive tackles to replace the starters who they let go or got rid of after setting a team record for sacks and finishing 6th against the run. So that's what we're watching. Defensive tackles and offensive line.
Yeah, that no question about that. You mentioned Ayuk, or you brought that up to you. Is Jamar Chase pouting too? Is this going to be a problem for Joe Burrow in Cincinnati?
I'm guessing, because I think he's got 2 years left on his contract, and he wants $30 million. And it's not the Brown family's habit to give a guy that kind of money this early. And I'm guessing they may play hardball. What you want to do is give them something. Take some of that signing bonus that's prorated over the length of the contract, give it to them base salaries, and give it to them as a bonus right now. Gets the egg off their face a little bit for playing hardball and then it not working out. So you give them a little incentive, they take it, and then they try it again after the season. And I think that's going to happen because Jamar Chase wants to win. Joe Burrow and that team is really good, but they need him. But remember, it's not what you do in September and October. It's what you do in November, December, and January. So the time we get there, these things that have happened now, we won't even remember.
John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist, with us on 365 Sports.
John, as we stand today, what's your Super Bowl prediction?
I have been asked that on several of my stations, and I don't want to pick the 49ers because the Super Bowl loser generally does not go back to the Super Bowl, much less win it, except New England. And the last one that did, not New England, was Buffalo back in the early 90s. So for whatever reason, the Super Bowl loser doesn't go back. And so I'm not picking Kansas City. The odds against the Chiefs are stacked because no team's ever won 3 Super Bowls in a row. My picks are Philadelphia in the NFC, Baltimore in the AFC. I picked Baltimore last year. They lost the championship game home to the Chiefs, and I think Derrick Henry will turn out to be the best free agent signing in the NFL because he's perfect for John Harbaugh. He is perfect for Lamar Jackson. Every time Jackson puts that ball in his stomach and he starts forward, it'll freeze the defense. And when Jackson pulls it out and takes off around in, he will be even more dangerous.
John, the NFL season is 2 nights away. Big night, Thursday night. That is the craziest trend about the team that loses. You would think they'd be hungry, but I guess you're so worn out, distraught, whatever it is, that the offseason must be hell.
Don't know what the reasons are. The 49ers have gone through a tumultuous offseason, big-time holdout, rookie receiver, first-round pick gets shot. He's now having to miss at least 4 games. And so next year, the big controversy with him will be Brock Purdy because he's going to have to be paid. And so it's always something. But I'd love for the 49ers to win it because I like Kyle Shanahan, and he's got a lot of former Texas people in his organization. And I'd like to see him get over that hump of being a guy that can't win the biggest game or even get there after what happened with Atlanta when New England had that biggest Super Bowl comeback in history. So, and there's a lot of good teams out there. Maybe Joe Burrow will be able to come back and they'll get everything worked out. Maybe the Cowboys will surprise everybody, win the Super Bowl. Dak will get $70 million a year.
John, thank you as always.
Thank you, guys. Sick 'em Bears. Congratulations to Baylor, and good luck. They're going to need it.
All right. That's John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist. He's been doing this a long time, man. This NFL season, I don't know. I'm not, San Francisco, Philadelphia. I think this is the year Dallas doesn't get past the second round of the playoffs.
Right. Well, way to go. Yeah, they're not going to do anything.
I mean, history shows.
It's been such a productive offseason.
I would be willing to bet that they don't make the postseason. Like I'm kind of convinced that they might be that
I'll
bad.
I'll bet you a keg stand.
No, I'm not. I can't do that again. Can't do that again. I'll get in trouble. I might be able to shotgun a
We
beer.
could do that on the road one time. Never know.
Yeah. But
I wouldn't say anything. I'm pretty good. My man laws with you.
Pretty good?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, uh-huh.
When we come back, Paul Catalina, of course, with his top 5. Also, Emery is working on 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the CW. Yes, sir.
In about 3 weeks, he'll be able to do top 5 FSU losses of the 2024 season.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm done.
4 weeks.
I'm-
I cannot.
Oh, yeah, they have an off week.
Here's the deal. I have no beef with Oklahoma. I had
Craig.
no beef. Now I do. Now
That's
listen.
fine.
Now I do.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, the chat room from the beginning of this show, when I just said, oh, my God, dear God, Paul, all of them said the dragon was unleashed early,
Yeah.
and he is not stopped.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to go down and help Willie Fritz and Sean Bell. I'm gonna be
They
up there.
could use it.
Sir
They could
Blob-
use it after what we saw last week.
Sir blah, 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 bazooka fired.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
my God. LMAO.
No, hey, the SEC schedule starts up here in a couple, in a couple more games.
Oh.
So we'll see where Oklahoma's going to take their lumps too, I'm sure. But
I forgot to bring up if DJU would be a first-round pick this next NFL draft.
Well, John would probably have some funny response to that too. He usually does, but no, I don't think that's in the cards.
There was a couple of, like, would he race DJU and who would win? John's a big guy.
DJU probably
Oh.
would.
Oh, my,
But
the dragon has unleashed his fire on FSU and Paul. The dragon is breathing fire. Should we stop?
No, I think I want to
We're
make
running out of time. I have another podcast tonight, literally
Yeah.
after this one. So,
But I did want to say with DJU, like, Joe Burrow just took all online classes at LSU. Like, he didn't even basically touch campus except for to play football. I don't know what DJU's situation is, but man, you forget about that side of it of like, you got to go to school the next day. And then like everybody's watching that game.
It's different. I mean, and again, they all were probably kissing his feet through the month of
because
August.
that's during
That's
the
the
BS
hype.
season.
That's the
hype
run-up, yeah.
season. Oh, and look, Mike Norvell did something that every single coach does. Every single one of them has this one. I can fix it. I've got it. Like,
Dude, he
he'll
was
be really
borderline tears last night, though. Like,
I like him. I like him. He did, but again, it's not like he hadn't said some things too. But oh well. I mean, all right. When we come back. Oh, my goodness. Craig is on fire today. This is 365 Sports, and Paul's Top 5 is next.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Go to bidonbeef.com. Use promo code 365sports at that next auction, and you can be winners like me and Jack are. And I have to have, some feelings of winning since FSU's terrible. So winning the beef auction last week is what's going to carry me through. And I've got, Jack and I will split 10 pounds of hamburger between each other, and that's all the joy I need in my life. I'm not crying, you're crying. Anyway, problems that FSU and Clemson both have. Both these teams are suing the ACC. Both of them are winless on the season, a combined 0-3. Two of those losses live in Tallahassee. Only one of them lives in Clemson to this point. But there are some similarities between what's going on between the two programs. So first off, number 5, too much outside noise, loud noises when it comes to, do you guys really deserve to be in a better conference? Why are you doing this, the ACC? Your fans are too loud. Your administration's too obnoxious. All these different things. Not to mention, if you're, that's mostly for Florida State. Clemson's in that too. They're not as loud about the realignment thing, but, you're Dabo Sweeney. What about the portal? What about Tyler from Spartanburg? What about all these things that you're doing? And that's all there, and they've got to find a way to filter that down to where the outside noise is manageable. But right now, I don't think either of these programs can avoid it. Player for player, coach for coach. It's out there, it's loud, and you can try to ignore it and compartmentalize all you want, but it's not going away. Number 4, systems that fit the players they have. Garrett Riley came in, but the offense really stayed the same. Jimbo Fisher did this with Bobby Petrino a year ago and saw himself fired. Now, Dabo's not in danger of that, but it is foolish to bring in what you consider to be an offensive innovator and then let that innovator not do what innovates. He's just calling Dabo's plays. Well, that's not why you bring in Garrett Riley. If you want to call Dabo's plays, just promote somebody when you let Brandon Streeter go. That I don't understand. So Garrett Riley, who was, one of the hot names in coordinating, has been reduced to not being able to do what made him one of the hot names in coordinating. So that's not good. And on the Florida State side, they're trying to run the Jordan Travis offense with DJ Uiagalelei. Well, you don't need to be Bear Bryant to know that shit's not going to work. And I apologize for cursing in this, but it's just not going to when you have two totally different players. DJU's limitations notwithstanding, it was foolish to think that they were similar quarterbacks in the first place. That is a huge mistake, and Mike Norvell has not built an offense, if he continues to want DJU to be the starting quarterback, that is going to protect DJU more. He's exposing him more than he needs to be based on what we've seen for the first 2 weeks. They're not playing to their strengths on offense. Number 3, how they build the roster. Say hi to Bob the Builder. Are you a Bob the Builder fan?
I like Bob the Builder.
Yeah.
That's the old school Bob, too.
Yeah. No,
Can we fix it?
Yes, we can.
Are you sure about that?
I don't know. I don't know. But let's start with Florida State. Florida State's been fantastic in the transfer portal. I'm going to start listing off guys that they've gotten through the portal. One of them without Norvell. That was Jordan Travis. He came in right before. But Jermaine Johnson, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, Jaheim Bell, Trey Benson, many others, all worked out for them. Offensive linemen, defensive linemen, you name it, worked out for them. Now, they've got a big whiff right now at quarterback with DJU, but is that the only problem that they whiffed on one transfer? No. The problem is that they haven't done well with high school recruiting. They are, in spite of the fact that they're a blue blood program and have usually recruited at a very high level, they're routinely outside the top 10 when it comes to that. They need to be a top 10 high school recruiting team. Now, let's go to the other side of that street. Very famously, Dabo Sweeney will not take any transfers at all. None, zip, zero, zilch. Won't do it. So, since he's not taking any transfers, that's what his problem is. His problem is not the high school players, although I will say I think that is starting to drop a little bit too, because as high school players see you not winning as much, you're going to lose on some of those guys. And those guys that came down to Clemson in Georgia 5 years ago are all going to Georgia now. We saw it the other day. The fact that you don't have ATN's baby bro on your roster because you don't take transfers,
Very telling to me. One of your greatest players of the last decade has a little brother who's as talented. Nah, he didn't want to come here in the first place. So, again, they're both not building the roster completely the right way, and they're not building the rosters for long-term success. They're building the rosters for one lucky hit. Number two, do they have the best staff around them? For Clemson, I would say this is, are you letting the staff do what they're best at? And do you have the best people you can get, or do you have people that will agree with your philosophy in building a roster and running the program? Dabo. For Florida State, do you have the best recruiters that you can have? Do you have people that can go out and sell you to the best, with the best of the best? I'm not totally sure they have that, given how they've had these losses in recruiting. And if you'll notice, they're in to the end with a lot of these 4- and 5-star players. I'll just use Travis Hunter as an example. They had Travis Hunter until they woke up on signing day morning and Deion Sanders is like, come to Jackson State. And while normally that would have been a thing that would have never happened in the world, it happened. Travis Hunter's just one of several players that's happened to that they've thought that they're in a good shot with, and then right at the end, they get sniped. Well, why are they getting sniped? Is it just NIL? Because their battle's end is pretty good, so it's got to be something else that they're not selling that they need to sell a little bit better. And with Clemson, like I said, are they letting the staff, are they getting the best guys, or are they just getting the best guys who Dabo feels are in his circle? You know, sometimes you got to go outside for new, fresh perspective. So both of them maybe have that same problem, just a different iteration of it. And number one, quarterback play. DJU was a bust at Clemson. He was a bust at Florida State. And Cade Klubnik has been a bust to this point as well. He's, you know, and that can be a lot of things. Maybe he's not playing in the great system. He doesn't have the playmakers, all these things. But their quarterback play is atrocious between the two of them. And you're not going to win. You know, there's quarterbacks like Grayson McCall and Cam Ward and others I'd rather have in the ACC than they have Kyron Drones than they have right now. And that means you're probably not going to be, you know, coasting off to Charlotte for the championship game automatically until you get that fixed. So while they're bitter enemies, they do have a lot in common, and they're both going to struggle until they fix these problems. It's just going to be this over and over and over again until they really clean that up. That's going to do it for the top five. We're wrapping it up right now.
All right, Paul, thank you very much for giving yourself even more to be upset about with the.
At least I'm working through the issue. Like,
no,
I'm trying to find the real root of the thing.
If Craig would just leave you alone, you could.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm done for today.
I'm trying to do the work. You know, I'm trying to do the work.
Now, sometimes you have to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
You just have to look in the mirror. All right. Garrett, thank you so much, Garrett Ross. He's been, you know, considering what he went through Sunday night, he has not been vocal. He's just kind of taking it in hopes that things turn around. Emery Winter. Thank you, Emery, working on 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the local CW. Craig, thank you very much. In full dragon mode from the very first, basically, sentence today. I have been the peacemaker. That's what I do. And then Paul Catalina, have fun tonight. I'm not so sure you should have fantasy football this year because it's just going to be a disaster.
I don't know. I've had
across the board.
I've had a couple good drafts, so I feel good about it, but that's probably going to blow up in my face. But yes, fantasy football show live tonight in about 20 minutes over on our NFL channel. So.
All right. I'm David Smoak. Thanks to all of you who are a part of everything, however you view us, Twitter, YouTube, on the app. I'm David Smoak. Thank you so much to our sponsors, too. Good night, 365 Sports.